welcome to 4 Decades of Imola, a series where instead of taking one car to different circuits, we're racing one series on the same circuit. Good evening and welcome to 4 Decades of Imola. Instead of taking one car to Formula 1 series, we're racing one series on the same circuit. Good evening and welcome to 4 Decades of Imola. Instead of taking one car to Formula 1 series, we're racing one series on the same circuit. Good evening and welcome to 4 Decades of Imola. Instead of taking one car to Formula 1 series, we're racing one series on the same circuit. Good evening and welcome to 4 Decades of Imola. Formula 1 series, we're racing one series on the same circuit. Good evening and welcome to 4 Decades of Imola. Formula 1 series, we're racing one series on the same circuit. Good evening and welcome to 4 Decades of Imola. Let's jump on board the Automobilista Here we are going down the start-finish straight at the 1972 version of Let's jump on board the Automobilista racetrack. Great opportunity for some streaming as we see the march go by. Here we are going down the start-finish straight at the 1972 version of Let's jump on board the Automobilista racetrack. Great opportunity for some streaming as we see the march go by. Here we are going down the start-finish straight at the 1972 version of Let's jump on board the Automobilista racetrack. Great opportunity for some streaming as we see the march go by. Here we are going down and start to even on your own up the hill there. Let's jump on board the Automobilista racetrack. Great opportunity for some streaming as we see the march go by. Here we are going down and start to even on your own up the hill there. Let's jump on board the Automobilista racetrack. Great opportunity for some streaming as we see the march go by. Here we are going down and start to even on your own up the hill there. Let's jump on board the Automobilista racetrack. Great opportunity for the high rim as we see the march go by. Here we are going down and start to even on your own up the hill there. Let's jump on board the Automobilista racetrack. Great opportunity for the high rim as we see the march go by. Here we are going down and start to even on your own up the hill there. Let's jump on board the Automobilista
that we see today. And then stretching out down the main straight towards the start-finish straight to complete a lap of the historic Imola circuit. And then stretching out down the main straight towards the...
Well, that is a lap of the historic Imola circuit back in 1972. We are in 1975 cars today, but let's not dilly-dally on that point. We did want to see the 1975, or the P36, the six-wheel Tyrrell. We can bring that up on the screen because it is an absolutely beautiful car. My name's Stairs. It's my absolute delight to welcome back Matt Dunlop to the commentary box. Good evening, Matt.
Good evening, Stairs, and welcome to everybody back to another Apex Rear Wing broadcast for our 4 Decades of Imola special. It's going to be running over the next few intermittent Wednesdays for the next 8 weeks, I should say, every second Wednesday, around 4 different iterations of Imola, as you were saying, and we are starting with what is the 1972 version of the circuit, running the 1975 Formula 1 cars plus the 1976 Tyrrell. So it's going to be a fantastic display. We've got our usual roster of Apex rear wing drivers that you all know and love, with Xeris currently leading the practice standings by just under 0.4 of a second, which is pretty close considering how different some of these cars can be, Stairs.
Yeah, and equal performance though in these cars. They may look very, very different. They will handle the same, and they don't have the performance disparity that we saw from the DRMs. Xeris quite happily sat in the garage right now with just over 5 minutes left until qualifying, but you're right, 27.1. He's recently overtaken Brenton Foley for the fastest lap of the session. Brenton Foley seems to be enjoying himself tonight as well.
Yeah, he certainly is, and these cars really suit Brenton Foley's driving style. As you can see, they love to slide all over the place, and those of you who are tuning in with us over ARW Season 8, in which we were competing in the DRMs, those cars were pretty overseas happy as well, but just not as happy as these cars are. Very lacking in aerodynamic grip, despite the massive rear wings and front wings you can see there, and the huge air scoops as well. They're really not very aerodynamically sound vehicles. not even much mechanical grip either, given the size of the front wheels on these things. So they're very, very slippery machines, and Brenton Foley is really bringing as much as he can out of that Penske machine that he's driving there. The number, I believe he's in the number 28 car there, the Penske PC1.
Yes, that is the number 28. Blue and red, similar colours to the car that's being driven by Roadhog, but they are very, very different shapes. If we can find Roadhog on the track, and he's actually in the garage. The cars, although they look quite similar in the spotter guide, when you see them front on, Roadhog's BRM looks quite different with its sort of flat wing at the front, so shouldn't be too difficult to differentiate those two. Here's the Williams driven by Nether. He's in the number 20 car with the red and white livery, and what was Williams' early days as a manufacturer in Formula One.
Yeah, this is, I think, before Williams, the team as we know today, was founded, which of course was founded in 1977. So this car you're seeing here would have been entered by either Frank Williams Racing Cars or the ISO Marlboro team, both of which were managed by Frank Williams. I can't remember which one was which. So it is indeed a Frank Williams creation that we are seeing here, being piloted by Nether Elmian. And another thing you will notice is that almost all of these cars sound exactly the same. And no, that's not just the mod developers being lazy with the sound effects. That's because in this era of Formula One, the Cosworth double floor valve V8 engine, or the DFV as it's commonly known, was so popular that almost every single team in the paddock used it. At one point, only Ferrari was the only team not using the DFV engine. And here at this race, all the cars except two are using that engine. The other two exceptions being that Ferrari being driven by Xeris, currently sitting in first place as he peels out of pit lane, and also Roadhog's BRM, which uses its own V12 engine as well. As you see a little bit of a crash there through, I think that was Tamburello.
Yeah, Tamburello, a very, very tricky corner to get right. Flat out if you can nail the line, but I think in the race they may want a little bit of a lift for confidence there. Just looking at the Shadow driven by Sam Smith, that's one of my favourite liveries, and expect him to go well tonight. And Kopasuka is another multicoloured livery. They certainly had some variety in colours back there in 1975.
Yeah, they certainly did. There's some very interesting looking vehicles, and that golden Warsteiner car being driven by Rody there as well is a great spectacle to behold too. Some very colourful liveries, and we also see a great Martini Racing paint job on the Brabham, not the Williams, so that's something that I'll have to stay on top of throughout this race weekend and throughout the rest of today. But yeah, there's some very nice paint jobs going around here.
Yeah, just on that, sorry to cut across you, Matt, but we are going to have a bit of a difficulty tonight because Tyrrell is the driver driving the Brabham. Madbird is the driver driving the Tyrrell. So,
yeah, I brought that up earlier when I was having a chat to the guys, so I thought that was going to be pretty confusing, and we'll try our best to articulate that as best as we can to the viewers watching on from wherever they happen to be in the world tonight, or this morning, or this afternoon.
Back on that Warsteiner livery, you mentioned that a few moments ago, Matty. Do you know who happened to drive that car in real life?
It was none other than the man, the myth, the legend himself, Harold Urkel.
Yeah, fantastic driver, and one who we look up to as somewhat of a deity at Apex Rear Wing. He was a very, very special man, and it was a touching thing for us to name our trophy after him, and it was Xeris who won the DRM Championship, the Harold Erdl Trophy, which was presented to him on Bathurst Day of all days.
I didn't even realise it was a physical trophy. I'll have to see if I can find a photo of that, because I'm sure that's fantastic.
There is some video. We must get that perhaps in the next broadcast and show that to all the viewers at home, the presentation of the trophy to Xeris.
So it was Xeris who won that championship, as you've just said, but it was very nearly Goofball Antics who would have clinched the championship for sure if he hadn't crashed in the final race. And now Goofball Antics and Xeris will be gridding up on the same grid in the Ferrari and the McLaren, which will be very accurately reflecting the championship battles of the era.
Yeah, looking forward to that. The Ferrari that Xeris is driving, he's in the 11 at the moment, which is the Clay Regazzoni car. Just a classic shape, that one. People who watch Rush would certainly be familiar with that car. And well, I mean, just a classic. It speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Two of the most iconic racing cars to ever grace the Formula One circuit. Indeed, the Ferrari 312T that Xeris is piloting, and the McLaren M23 that Goofball Antics is steering. The Emerson Fittipaldi car I think this is the same era from when James Hunt was competing, but I'm not sure if James Hunt was with McLaren in this year.
No,
I think he was in the Hesketh.
That's
He
right.
was.
And we don't have a Hesketh, although we have the Warsteiner car that was built by Hesketh, driven by Rody, the Ertl car. But we don't have the same Hesketh in this particular race that was driven by James Hunt in 1975.
We do not. So were the drivers able to just elect which cars they wanted to drive for the season?
Yes.
For the race, rather?
They all got a choice, and the only stipulation was that we don't have two cars or two drivers in the same team, if at all possible, so that we would have a bit of an easier time of it as commentators, and so as many teams as possible could be represented. Later on, I think we did double up on one or two. That's because we'd already filled every slot, but there are a lot more teams in 1975 than there have been in more recent years.
There certainly were. And speaking of liveries and teams and paint jobs, how can we forget that Lotus being driven by Birdo tonight? The Lotus 72, that one is Ronnie Peterson's original car, and that is a stunning livery, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah, you're not wrong. That is absolutely beautiful. What a very enduring livery. That livery around until 1987, I believe, and then it was revived by the Lotus Formula One team in more recent years, around the sort of 2012, that kind of era. And I was very glad to see it come back and very sad to see it leave again.
Yeah, that's the issue with tobacco-related liveries, of course, is that you see them go for the most part in the 1990s, and they make sporadic appearances when they can. But the ever corporate nature is always making sure that liveries stay to specific colours, dimensions, what have you. We've just finished the practice session. I do believe it was Xeris that finished on top there, and now we move into qualifying. But this is different qualifying to what we normally see in Apex Rear Wing, isn't it, Stairs?
Yes, they normally do a shootout session, but because we are trying our best to emulate what Formula One was like in the real-life Formula One, they didn't have shootouts in 1975, so we're doing a truncated version of what they would have done at the time in 1975, and they've got 15 minutes, I should say, to have at it with no limitations.
So it's going to be great to see drivers making use of slipstream, because that has been a massive thing that drivers have been noticing in the practice session so far. It's just how much slipstream you can get on that massive run from the final corner of Rivazza all the way to Tamburello, and maybe even through Tamburello if you're feeling brave all the way down to Tosa.
There's a huge cacophony of noise outside down the pit lane, and here come the cars down towards Tamburello. It's an incredible atmosphere, and I say that even though we're looking at it as a game, but the noise in my ears is unbelievable.
I wonder if we're going to see a repeat of what we saw in the actual real-life Formula One this year at Monza, with all the drivers waiting to the last minute trying to get that toe, because I think every 10th... Oh, that's a bit of a contact there between Bagsy and Xeris with that... that's a March, I believe, with the massive T-trays on the back behind the rear wheels.
Yeah, you could carry some lunch to your patients if you were a nurse in that car, although you'd blow their eardrums out of their respective ear holes. So, yeah, that was a little bit of contact.
Cause more health issues than you can solve with that scenario.
Not ideal. So, if I'm not wrong, that's Xeris, the first car on the racetrack, just coming through the Aqua Minerale part of the racetrack at the moment. My live timing seems to have deserted me at this crucial moment as we begin qualifying, but we'll try our best to get that back. Available at arwleague.liveraces.com for all your live timing.
So let's talk about this Imola circuit as it was in 1972, completely absent of any form of chicanes, as we have seen on all the layouts. Generally since, we had a couple added in the late 1970s, but in 1972, it was a pure track with no efforts to slow these cars down, apart from the nature around them, which necessitated the corners. So Xeris is going through what would have been the bus stop chicane in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s on the run down to Tamburello, which, of course, a chicane was built there in 1995. And currently, it's just a flat-out blast or an almost flat-out blast, depending on how much temperature is in your tyres. We run down now towards what would be the Villeneuve chicane, but is now a almost flat kink, trying to get the brakes, trying to get it stabilised into the Tosa hairpin, the slowest and tightest corner on the track, which has remained relatively unchanged since then. But now we're charging back up the hill towards what will be Piratella, as Xeris has posted his first sector so far.
Sorry, we are just looking at a replay of Sam Smith coming out of the pits right in front of the march driven by Bagsy, and they had an almighty coming together, which destroyed both of their cars. Sorry, go on.
No, they certainly did. Oh, yeah, that's a big one there. So,
weird.
Coming through the Castellaccio corner, as it was called, actually, it wasn't referred to as Acqua Minerale at this point. It was Castellaccio running down through what would be a chicane right about now, but it's now just a flat charge, or I want to say flat, but a lot of these corners are very, very tricky to get right at flat out, and very difficult to line up the car in the right positions.
Xeris has done that really well.
He has. He's certainly nailed his line through Ravazza now, and it will be a flat run all the way to the start-finish line for Xeris. And yeah, as I was saying, it's a very fast, very, very fast and flowing circuit as it was in 1972. And look how tight those grids are packed together. That's going to make for an interesting start.
That will. Xeris sets the first lap of the session, which is a 26.9. The next man to come across the line will be Brenton Foley. He's got a few cars in tow, so I wonder if he has helped them out with any sort of slipstream. It looks like he hasn't, actually, because he hasn't set himself a lap. Madbird and Nethers have come up. I wonder if Foley ended up with a track cut for any reason there.
That's a good point. The old track cuts are coming back to bite once again. We didn't see any come up in practice, but I'm not sure if they're actually enforced in practice sessions, so that might be the reason why.
Xeris is going faster again. He's gone another 1/10 of a second quicker in the first sector, so just easing his way into this qualifying session. And 26.9 is already very, very quick compared to the times we saw in practice.
Being a circuit implemented into the game by Rights of Studios themselves, not a third-party modification, there's not really any tricky spots in regards to errors with the track development, so you sort of have to take it at face value. The most dangerous part for these drivers is going to be making sure they always keep all four wheels on the track, or if they do let a couple of wheels in the grass, get out of there as soon as you can, because if you put any weight load onto wheels that are in the grass, you're going to get sucked into the fence, and it's very, very hard to get out. Best case scenario, you won't have any damage and you'll lose a lot of time. Worst case scenario, you'll be buried in the fence.
Brenton Foley's got a novel way of warming his tyres up every time he comes out of the pits. He does a donut, as we just saw on the broadcast. He hasn't actually managed to set a lap yet because he's had incidents on both of his laps. And so he's just come out of the pits to start his out lap now. Meanwhile, Xeris has gone faster on that lap again, 26.643.
Yeah, these tyres really struggle to hold temperature as we see a big slide over the Tosa hairpin for Xeris there. Due to the relatively primitive nature of how the cars were designed, of course, you can modify the brake ducts and you can modify a couple of things in setup as well. But it's just so difficult to maintain temperature in these tyres, so you've got to make sure you stay on the black stuff at all times and warm them up as quickly as you can, which is why we've been seeing Brenton Foley doing those donuts in the end of pit lane, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot of ducking and weaving and accelerating and braking on the warm-up lap before the race starts.
Yeah, absolutely. They do take a long time to get any sort of temperature into them. Xeris now 7/10 of a second faster than anyone else, but behind him, it's been a bit of a game of musical chairs. Goofball Antics has slotted into second place. Sam Smith in third. Roadhog has dropped, has gone into fourth. Nether into fifth. Madbird, who was fourth only about 30 seconds ago, has now dropped to fifth. Birdo's put in a lap time for fifth place. It's just gone down to 7th place, Berto, I should say. Pablo into 8th. Bagsy did a PB. He's currently sat in 9th place. Tyrrell in 10th. Rhodey in 11th. And Brenton Foley still yet to set a time.
So I reckon this is going to shape up to be a very unpredictable session towards the end. We've only got 8 minutes, 45 seconds left. So any drivers looking to make setup changes or wanting to be finishing their laps up and coming into the pits pretty soon to make those changes so they can get out and have another tilt with what I assume will be slightly improved track conditions and your chance to get a slipstream at least some parts of this circuit.
Well, Birdo's currently on a lap looking like he's going to improve. He's up by 9/10 of a second on the lap that he set prior, and he's still 9/10 away from pole position, but it will vault him up the order, I should think. He's currently 2.6 seconds down on Xeris, and he's going to be up in that battle where Roadhog, Nether and Madbird are around about 1.8 seconds off pole. So if he continues this lap, which he should do quite comfortably. I think he's got past the danger zone coming up to the start-finish straight now. And I say straight, quite curved sections of this racetrack, and he does indeed improve to 4th place. Great job from Berto.
Meanwhile, Brenton Foley is really struggling to put a quick lap down. He's down a little bit. It was down 0.5 of a second at the last split, and he's just really struggling to get a grip of these cars at full tilt. He was doing okay, managing to keep it on the track during the practice session, but he's posted a 1 minute 29.3, and that puts him down in provisional 8th place, which is uncharacteristically low for Brenton Foley.
He was second fastest in practice, and I wonder if that was because they were all doing their high fuel runs. As soon as he's taken the fuel out of it, the car has just not responded to what he's asking it to do. So he may well come good in the race, but at the moment, you're right, he is struggling in this qualifying session.
Yeah, a couple of the drivers were saying that these cars become very unpredictable when they run light on fuel, which a lot of cars of the time did, especially the DRMs. We noticed some of those cars, the Ford Capri especially, behaved very strangely when there wasn't enough fuel in the tank. So filling it up makes it handle better, but sure, it slows you down quite a bit. So that might be something to strategize about, because I'm not sure how much of a tank of fuel these guys are going to be burning throughout this race. He's 3.4 of a second up at the second split, and he's looking to make up a bit of time, but not necessarily enough.
No, that is up on pole. He's up by 0.7 on his own. Look at how fast he's trying to get the car stopped down into Ravazza. The car is all sorts of sideways. Straightening the car up there is incredibly tricky. But yeah, that was 2 green sectors there for Brenton Foley and a purple middle sector. So if he's gone anywhere near matching Xeris in this final sector, he could snatch pole position from what has been looking like a difficult qualifying session. And he misses out by 1/10 of a second in the end. But my goodness, he's put a lap down when we thought he wasn't going to be able to.
Welcome to the show, Brenton Foley. He has officially showed up, and for once he didn't have the car sideways through every single corner as I thought he was going to, especially in these things. So he's really managed to find the sweet spot in terms of handling for these vehicles, and he's pushing it as hard as he can. He's sitting behind, who's that in the, I keep forgetting who's in these
that's
cars.
Bagsy in that March. So,
it is Bagsy indeed. I need to be checking my spotter's guide a little bit more thoroughly. But it is Brenton Foley sitting behind Bagsy, trying to get a slipstream through some of these parts. It's going to be, never mind. He just spun out and left him to the... and just gotten out of the way for him.
Yeah, you don't really want to slipstream through here. It's not really beneficial around this part of the track. He's well down on this particular lap, so we'll try and see if we can find if anyone else is doing anything interesting. Where's Nether? He's currently in 7th place and appears to be on an out lap. Xeris is not looking like he's going to improve on this particular lap, but he did move the goalpost a couple of times, and if not for that, Foley might have found himself in pole position currently. Looking like he's going to improve on this particular lap, but
just on the slipstreaming, one of the things that really affects these cars is the dirty air. Well, these things punch a huge hole in the air. So what I'm looking for is really the low air pressure zone behind the car. It doesn't pull itself into shape very quickly at all. So if you're close behind someone, you won't have any aerodynamic grip pretty much at all. So you have to be very, very careful slipstreaming into corners like Tamburello and other high-speed bends there, because you're going to lose a lot of grip and the car's going to handle it very differently to how it does in clean air.
Xeris is currently stopped on the inside of the racetrack. I think he's just trying to find a gap. He wasn't setting the live timing screens alight on that lap, and he's got it back running again now.
Yeah, that curb there at Ravazza is pretty tricky, because if you rotate it and get stuck on the curb, you've practically beached yourself and you could very well end your race.
Another moment here for Roadhog. So quite a few people, as they're pushing the limits in the dying stages of this qualifying session, getting the car out of shape, and that was the last corner for Roadhog. That was Ravazza as well.
There's no doubting which car Roadhog is driving. As we were saying earlier, you can see that Stanley BRM signage from all corners, and it makes it very easy to distinguish what he's in. He's posted a 1:28.438 has been his fastest lap so far. His last lap was a 1:37.153, so he's got a ways to go if he wants to try and push that lap time any further up.
Yeah, and where he spun actually hurts his speed coming across the line to start another lap, so that's a bit unfortunate for him. Alberto has improved to 5th. Last time we were checking in on him, he was in 7th place, and he and Sam Smith are only separated by a small margin. Teammates last championship when we had the DRMs, and they were both in the Pink Pigs. So let's see if Birdo can improve. Sam Smith wasn't on a particularly quick lap at last check. And Birdo's
down a little bit as well.
He is, isn't he? But Roadhog...
Just under 2 tenths. Let's have a look at Roadhog, yeah.
Yeah, 2 tenths up on his PB. Unfortunately, though, he has a massive gap in front of him to Berto, so he'll need a bit more than that to improve his position.
Yeah, he's going to have to try and find 8.5 tenths of a second to make his way up to 5th position on the grid, but 6th is still pretty good for Roadhog. And he was going pretty quickly in the practice session as well. He really likes the way these cars handle, and it's showing on the track.
Goofball Antics is doing a good job there in 2nd place at the moment. In that McLaren, nearly won the championship in DRMs, so close.
And Roadhog, he's up to 4th position. He's the whole second up on his fastest time.
Oh wow, we shouldn't have gone off him then. He must have had a horrible last sector in the previous lap that he set.
So he's up to 4th ahead of Sam Smith by just under a tenth of a second. So yeah, his previous fastest lap must have had a disastrous last sector for his turn. So now he's up to P4 behind...
Birdo can return serve because he got a bit of slipstream from Rhodey on the lap that he's just started now.
He does, so it'll be interesting to keep an eye out on Birdo. I just saw Goofball depart the garage again.
We've just lost Birdo. At least I have. It's not my computer, is it?
I've lost him as well. He just drifted off. He's lagged right out, so I'm not sure what's happened to his connection there, or whether or not it's still good. So
I think that's a server issue. The live timing screen has disappeared for us, so I wonder if they'll just set the grid based on that, because there's only a minute left in the qualifying session.
Well, that's a shame. I was looking forward to see what Roadhog was going to be able to do, because I saw him quickly pull into the pit lane. I would have assumed he made a couple of setup changes here and there, and he ripped his tyres to shreds on the way out of his pit box, trying to get back onto the track and set another flying lap. So unfortunately, we weren't able to see that, and the server has indeed booted us. So it is a server issue, and I'll keep you posted based on what's going to be happening.
Yes, we'll try and get pictures up as quickly as possible, and hopefully that won't take too long.
Just received word from Madbo that Xeris disconnected. Xeris, of course, being the host of the server. So that has kicked everyone off, which is very unfortunate, and it's going to delay our proceedings somewhat.
Excellent. Which gives us a bit of a chance to deal with a bit of a technical issue. I'm getting word through that there is a bit of an echo, so apologies for that. I will try and fix that for you. I think I've found what was causing that. So yes, let's hope that the server comes back very, very shortly indeed.
Should be back in a moment, according to Madbird, so let's cross our fingers and hope we are back racing underway very soon.
So, what are your main takeaways from that qualifying session, Matty?
My main takeaway is that Roadhog is going to be the one to watch, because he's very, very fast in these 1975 cars, and it's going to be fantastic. I was expecting the field to be very, very spread out based on how tricky these things are to handle. I was trying to do some practice laps of my own earlier on, and I was just sending it into the fence every chance that I got, really. But everyone's getting to grips with these cars really, really well. They know how to handle them, and it's going to make for some great racing. It is going to be a race of attrition, I think, in terms of people trying to stay on the track and whatnot. But the fact that there's no pit stops means we're going to see some really, really good racing on the track. I don't know if I can call it at this stage, though. I want to say Xeris. That's a pretty safe bet, but it's always boring to predict Xeris for a race victory, isn't it, Stairs?
Yeah, we want to see, and I mean, with no disrespect, of course, to Xeris, but we want to see something that's, you know, exciting and unexpected.
So, I'm not sure if we are going off the practice times, but let's just go through what those practice times were when the server decided to quietly stop itself for a minute there. So it was Xeris leading on a 1 minute 26.596 ahead of Brenton Foley, just over a tenth behind him with a 126.707. Bit of a gap behind him to Goofball Antics, 1 minute 27.35 in the McLaren. Roadhog, as I was saying in the BRM, was a 1 minute 27.4, just over 8 tenths off Xeris. Sam Smith was just behind him, a little over 9 tenths of a second. And I'm just trying to see if we have another update on what's happening here. I'm just trying to find out where these chats are going to. Just looking at the Discord here, folks, trying to figure out. Got a private message here from Nether saying that they're switching server hosts, so it may be a little bit longer yet.
Oh, so
Let's go.
does that mean we've lost Cirrus entirely? That could be.
Xerus' internet is gone, according to Nether.
Oh, that's not good. So, well, that puts a huge spanner in the works in terms of who wins this race, because Xerus isn't there to contest it. Although I can see he's still in the Discord server. So, actually, Nether joins us in broadcast. Nether, what have you got for us?
Yeah, it looks like Xerus' internet's actually just gone down, so we're not quite sure why. He's going to contest the race on 4G, and he's just passing the server settings to Sam Smith at the moment. So Sam's going to host, Xerus will still race, but he'll be on 4G. So he should still be okay to race, but he just wasn't comfortable hosting and racing at the same time on 4G.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, that's good news that he can race. Thanks for that, Nether. And Matty, well, that's good news, because Sam did do the practice server last week when they were trialing this mod, make sure everything was all right. So we know that Sam is able to do that, and that should be up and running shortly.
Yeah, so not a massive amount of unknowns with the current situation now, which is always reassuring to know. So I'll just quickly run through your practice standings as they were. It was Xerus first, followed by Brenton Foley in second. Qualifying standings, I should say, because we are indeed doing a session. I'm not used to doing these qualifying sessions. So Xerus is on the pole. Brenton Foley is in second position ahead of Goofball Antics in third, and I think they'll be lining up on the same row given the grid layout of this circuit. Roadhog is in P4 with Sam Smith in P5. Birdo starts from 6th in the Lotus ahead of Nether, who we were just speaking to before, in 7th in the Williams. Madbird in that 6-wheeled Tyrrell P34 will be in position 8 ahead of Pablo in the Fittipaldi Kopasuka in 9th. Then we have Josh Bagsy in 10th in the March. Tyrrell, as in the driver Tyrrell, in the Brabham in 11th. And Rhodey bring up the rear with the Warsteiner Brewery car in 12th position with all laps completed. So the gap from the back to the front was a 1 minute 26.595 for Xerus and a 1 minute 35.967 for Rhodey. So it was a gap of 9.3 seconds, which means that lap traffic is going to be a consideration once again here, Stairs.
Yeah, 30-lap race, so and with a 1:26-minute lap time from Xerus, although in the race I would expect that would be probably a little bit closer to the 30s, but of course the backmarkers will be lapping suitably slower as well, so around a 10-second deficit. Quick maths, what's that, 6 plus, probably about 8-9 laps in, they'll start lapping those cars. That's assuming they don't have any spins on the way.
So the race we'll be running will be a 30-lap race, if I'm not mistaken, which is about half real-life race distance. So it's going to be a bit of a trek, but they'll be able to do it without needing to refuel or change tyres, and that will mean that lap traffic will become an issue they encounter a number of times throughout the race. We're all just waiting to get underway once again. If you've just joined us, folks, the reason why you're looking at static shots of the Imola Raceway from 1972 is because we've had server issues at the tail end of qualifying, which means we're currently in the process of switching server hosts. So we'll be back with you with a new connection shortly. And qualifying has I believe qualifying has been concluded. So it will be Xerus starting from pole position, whose internet crash was the cause of our loss of server. Next to him on the front row will be Brenton Foley in P2. And if what I believe is correct, there'll be 3 cars on the front row. It'll be Goofball Antics lining up in third, in the Ferrari, the Penske, and the McLaren, respectively.
Yeah, good qualifying session from Roadhog as well, joining Goofball Antics on the second row of the grid, and Sam Smith and Birdo probably a little bit lower down than we were expecting them to be. They obviously still had a lap or two in hand at the end of that session, and we don't know whether they would have improved on their positions there, but I guess we'll never know, because we're going to go straight on into the race, I believe. And, I mean, we only lost 1 minute of that qualifying session, so we got most of it in.
We certainly did. Yeah, sorry, I'm just looking at a photo in the Discord here. Is Roadhogs throwing photos in the chat to pass the time. I thought it was a trophy presentation from the Harold Erdl Cup, but it was not. I'm mistaken. So
we'll get pictures of that for you.
I'm looking forward to those pictures for sure. So, Stairs, let's talk about your predictions for this race. I think I've said who I believe is going to win. I'm not sure if I actually made that very clear, but who do you think is going to win?
Well, of everything that we've raced, I think these cars are probably the most similar to the DRMs. That it's funny because they're completely different. One's an open wheel class and one is a touring car. But in terms of the level of difficulty to drive, anyone who did well in DRMs, I would expect to do well in these cars. So for me, that puts Goofball Antics up there. That puts Sam Smith up there. Puts Berto up there. Of course, it puts Xeris up there. The difference being Xeris has figured out how to drive these cars straight out of the box. So without going boring and suggesting that Xeris might win, Goofball Antics, I think his advantage in the DRM series was strategy, which won't be so much of an issue here tonight. So I'm gonna put Sam Smith as my sort of pull a rabbit out of the hat prediction for tonight.
I think Sam Smith's a good call because you say these cars are similar to the DRMs, but only similar, or they're mostly similar to the Porsche 935s, I would say, given the power to weight ratio between the cars. The Porsche 935s had a lot of power on tap, and these things only pack about 450 horsepower maximum, but they only weigh just over 600 kilograms. So oversteer, especially when you're on the throttle, is a huge consideration, and that's something that would have been faced in those powerful cars, such as the Porsche 935s and the BMW M1, which was driven by Resist, who is not racing with us tonight. So I'd say the best bets for the race would be Sam Smith, but be interesting to see if Berto goes well as in addition, given that he was in another of the Porsche 935s. Nether was as well. But Goofball Antics and Xeris, as you remember, were in the BMW 320, which was quite down on power and handled on rails comparatively to the other vehicles in the series. So it's just a matter of how well these drivers can translate their abilities to these cars. But as you were saying, Xeris has done that pretty much straight away. So I'm going to call Xeris as my winner, with Sam Smith a close second.
Yeah, it's probably a brave man who would bet against that prediction of yours there, Matty. Handling like rails isn't how I describe these cars. So that will be a point of difference for those who are coming from the BMWs. And of course, I guess you say that in relative terms because they still were pretty difficult to drive, but I guess you're talking about in comparison to those Porsches and the Capris.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they were very varied cars there. And it took quite some time for the drivers to get comfortable with how they handled it. But now that we've got these 1975 Formula Ones, which behave pretty similarly, I think it won't take them too much longer to relearn how to drive, basically, especially for some of the drivers at the back of the field who are used to those DRMs. So I did say earlier that it was probably going to be a race of attrition, but I'd say these guys are pretty comfortable with the vehicles now, and they're going to be keeping it on the black stuff for the most part, which means we get a good race for a long time with 12 drivers, hopefully as long as possible.
Well, if anything was a good preparation for these cars, it would have been the 10 weeks of DRMs that we did a couple of months ago. So I think that they are used to driving cars for longer periods of times, like the DRM races that were 55 minutes in length, and not crashing them. So having said that, we did have the odd crash in the DRM series. But we also, since that, we had the 3 hours of Suzuka, which was another endurance race that was quite successful. So that was another exercise in trying to keep the cars out of the barriers for long periods of time, which requires a lot of concentration. So tonight's measly 30 laps, in theory, should be a fair bit easier than that.
That's exactly right. And this being a 1972 track, of course, most of the barriers are directly next to the racing surface, even in some of the faster corners. So there's no room for error in places like Tamburello. There's a little bit of runoff at the edges of corners like Ravazza and Tosa, but the brakes in these things are not fantastic, and it's very hard to slow any car down as it's careening through the grass at high speed. So consistency and making sure you're staying on the track will come first. Once you get comfortable with that, then you start picking up the speed. But you have to pick up that speed very carefully. As we can see, drivers in second and third gear even can't really put their foot on the throttle too early, or they'll spin out straight away and head straight for the nearest fence.
Yeah, you got to treat that throttle pedal like there's a soft-boiled egg underneath, and you don't want to You want to squeeze it so hard that it bursts and puts yoke all over your footwell. It is very, very, very ginger sort of inputs that you have to apply to get the power down nicely and quickly. If you've just joined us, we are just waiting for a new server to be set up, as the man who normally sets our server up, Xerus, has had some connectivity issues. Should still be able to race, we believe, but Sam Smith will be hosting for us tonight. So that's what the current delay is. But it does give us a bit of an opportunity to talk about the things we're looking forward to in this series. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this Imola circuit evolves over the 4 decades.
Well, we'll have to talk about it relatively quickly. I've just received word from Rody that the server is back on. So we'll be with you with racing action very shortly as everyone's starting to file back into the server. But this is going to be really interesting to see, because it'll be a relatively gradual progression from the fire-breathing monsters we're seeing at the moment to the refined handling Formula Ultimates of 2018 and 2019 that we'll be racing on in 7 weeks' time. So just heard from word from Rody that Xerus is praying to not have a second lightning strike that knocked his internet out in the first place. So he'll be hoping to run the entire length of this race, being 30 laps around the 1972 Imola circuit, and we should be ready to go for some racing pretty soon.
And thanks to Nether and Rody and everyone who let us know the server's back up. We're just loading into it now, so we'll be able to bring you pictures very, very shortly indeed.
So what are you looking forward to in this 4 Decades of Imola series, Stairs? Because it's going to be, obviously we are keeping championship points as we go through, and it's going to be interesting to see how well drivers are able to translate their skills from one car to the next. But who do you think is going to be the one to manage that transition the best, from the 1972 cars to the 1988 vehicles to the 2001 series and then on to the modern day 2019 vehicles?
Sorry, just a lot of noise in my ears. It's difficult to concentrate. See if I can get a... there we go, there's an angle. That's a little bit easier to hear. Yes, who's gonna have the easiest time of it in terms of adjusting to the new cars? I'd say that Goofball Antics always seems to me to be one who adapts pretty quickly. He tends to be fairly fast at the start of a season. Xerus, of course. I think Brendan Foley might struggle. He, by his own admission, isn't a huge fan of open wheelers and is probably going to struggle as the series gets more and more aero-based. Sam Smith is a man who's quick out of the box, so I expect him to do well as well.
Yeah, Brenton Foley says he doesn't like open wheelers, but he comes and sets some ludicrous lap times as he always does, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think the thing he has against open wheelers is the aero. Really, these cars are not quite as aero dependent as the ones later on, so I believe that's his main complaint. But he's certainly competitive tonight. We've seen that.
Yeah, they're very similar, as we were saying, to those DRMs in terms of how they handle. They don't rely on aerodynamic grip very much at all, so they suit Brenton Foley's driving style quite well, and that driving style is full speed, blasting with maximum oversteer, power sliding through the corners, and it's always a spectacle to watch, and is always somehow able to translate that driving style into very quick lap times.
So I believe there'll be a small warm-up session now as the cars get ordered on the grid by the server host, which would be, I was going to say which would be Sam Smith, but Sam Smith is out on the racetrack, so he may have already done that, and we're just going to go through this quick warm-up session.
We're just having a couple of issues with Pablo as well, who's had a file mismatch, so he's left the game and he's trying to get that sorted out. So hopefully that doesn't delay things too much either. Pablo, of course,
that'll be the reason
driving.
For the delay.
No, shouldn't be too much of a delay. Pablo behind the wheel of the Fittipaldi, of course. So hopefully we can see that car out on track pretty soon. We've got 10 minutes of warm-up, so let's leave the guys to it, and they'll be doing some practice starts and getting comfortable with the track once again.
Bit strange that he's having that mismatch issue with he didn't have any issues in practice and qualifying, so it's a bit weird that it's occurred now. So it might be something to do with
the mod that Sam's got, although Sam didn't have any mismatch issues with Xerxes' server, so that's a bit strange.
No, and it's only Pablo who's having the mismatch, so hopefully we can get something sorted out there. Something that, in terms of Automobilista files that's happened recently is an update was just released, I think it was either today or in the past couple of weeks. So people jumping on for the first time in a while would have to update or install that update, so that may have confused a couple of things, but I don't see that it would have, because all drivers would have to be on the same version anyway to be able to compete against each other. So at the moment, I'm just trying to look for reasons as to why Pablo's fallen off the server to kill time here during the warm-up session. We've got a couple of cars pulling out now, just getting comfortable with the thing. I'm not sure how soon we will see as Tyrrell crashes into the fence almost immediately after pulling out of the pit lane there and go straight back in. And let's have a look at that Tyrrell P34. I think I referred to it as the P76 earlier, which is completely wrong. It is the P34 that raced in 1976. Just seeing a replay of that incident I was talking about earlier.
Yep, trying to keep up with you there, Matty. P76, was that a very small car that was on Top Gear or something? Am I getting my wires crossed there, or...?
I think you're thinking of the PLP50. That was the car that
there we
Jeremy
go.
Clarkson was driving around the BBC offices, of course, and inside the elevators and whatnot. So it's the Tyrrell...
P76 was a British Leyland or something, maybe.
Oh, it was. So now I'm all sorts of confused. It was the P34. Yes, that's right, for the Tyrrell.
Project 34. Sexy beast, that six-wheel Tyrrell, and Madbird was adamant that we use this mod so that we can see this car, and I find that it's hard to disagree with him.
Certainly is, and the reason why I think, well, there's a couple of reasons why they used that six-wheel configuration, because one, there was no rules preventing it, which is the reason why a lot of things are done in Formula One, but also because you can see from the front on angle just how small the drag coefficient would be, just how little surface area of tyre there is at the front there punching into the air. So it means the air can flow over the front of the car that much smoother, reduces drag, and with an extra set of wheels on the front, you get just a little bit more surface area, so it theoretically increases your front end grip, and it did perform pretty well. It indeed won a race. The 1976 Swedish Grand Prix was won by the Tyrrell P34, but the FIA banned the concept soon after the conclusion of the 1976 season, I believe.
I wonder if that was more a cost-saving measure than anything else, because you can imagine the costs involved in having to develop a tyre that's a different size to the ones being used by every other team for the front four wheels.
I think that's the reason why Tyrrell stopped using the concept, in fact, is because Goodyear was unwilling to supply those tyres to them anymore, just because of how much of a pain in the neck it was to build them, really.
Can you imagine the P34 in current spec Formula 1 having to do a pit stop in under 3 seconds with 6 wheels? And you'd have, I mean, an awful amount of difficulty getting the number of people in there that you would require to have a pit stop. You know, they'd all be tripping on each other's toes, trying to get the wheels off and on.
I imagine the best solution to that issue would be to develop some sort of bracket that can pick up both those wheels at the same time with 2 rattle guns built in to take both the nuts off and then reattach a second set of wheels, but it would be a logistical nightmare. And with so much time lost and gained, especially in modern pit stops, back in the day it wasn't too much of an issue, of course, when pit lane activity wasn't as refined as it is now. But yeah, it will be very hard to get it right with what we're seeing, record 2.1 second, even quicker than that now. They're under, what are they at now? I think they're at 1.9? Have they gone that fast yet? I'm not sure.
Williams might have. That seems to be the only thing they are fast at in the current era of Formula 1, but you're right. It's I like your thinking that having some sort of bracket that has 2 rattle guns on it that would fit over those 4 wheels, that would be something.
So I just looked into it, and the record is currently a 1.88, which was completed by the Red Bull team at the German Grand Prix this year. But yeah, I feel like a bracket like that would be immediately outlawed. Otherwise, I would have been using them for eons to get all 5 lug nuts off and on at the same time with older setups for touring cars and stock cars.
So we on the grid, but this is the warm-up session as we appear to... looks like Pablo did get back into the service, so we're just going to run out the clock on this warm-up session, I believe, before we get the race underway. They'll get an opportunity to practice getting these things off the line. Live timing's been a bit up and down today, but from what I can see, I believe Pablo has managed to rejoin the server.
And from what I'm seeing, we're just underway now for a practice start. If you're just joining us, don't worry, you haven't missed the start of the race as Madbird careens into the wall. Pablo and Sam Smith have a collision as well, and there's like 5 cars caught up at the back there.
Deary me.
What you're seeing now is a practice start, thankfully. So they're aiming to iron out these issues with their starting performance before the race properly gets underway.
Yeah, iron out is probably a good word because it's full of creases, and these parts of the racetrack are very, very difficult to do single file, let alone side by side. But they won't have really had an opportunity to get too spaced apart because the first braking zone isn't until that part that they just come out of now, the Tosa bend. But you've got Tamburello and the Villeneuve right-hander, and they are very, very challenging corners in their own right.
They certainly are, and I think I may be wrong in what I was saying earlier about there being a 3-wide front row. That's what it looks like according to the painted lines on the surface, but I think they'll just be lining up side by side with a little bit of a stagger to the left-hand side. So it should make it just a little bit easier to get underway. But if there's a stall or a bad start or someone launches the car sideways trying to put too much throttle in first gear, that's going to cause some issues.
Yeah, you're not wrong, so hopefully that doesn't happen. We saw an inauspicious start to our DRM championship back in Brno a few months ago with a start line incident that thankfully didn't take anyone out of the race, but it did severely hamper their races. So we have fingers crossed for not a repeat of that.
Yeah, I think it was Decimage who was one of the biggest. I'm not sure. It was definitely a party involved in one of those incidents. Whether he caused it or whether he suffered from it, I'm not sure.
I think that was one of the Western Australian round at Barbagallo where he and Berto collided. But the one I'm thinking of was Madbird and Xeris in the first round, which unfortunately put Xeris towards the back of the grid, and then he ended up DNFing while trying to chase back the positions he'd lost. Now this is an interesting formation on the grid there with the Kopasuka there of Pablo. I'd be very surprised if that's where his actual grid box is.
Yeah, he seems to be quite close to the back of Nether there. I think he's just realised that he's... Oh, hello.
Nether's driven straight into the back of Goofball Antics there, so whoever said go, Nether was the only one listening.
Looks to be a bit of a false start there.
A little bit.
So we won't have any of those sort of issues, hopefully.
Hope so.
With the race being controlled under the lights and not being controlled by someone in the Discord server going 3, 2, 1, go.
Well, all this is doing is just increasing our anticipation for the start of this race. We've had a few comments in the live chat from some well-known to us characters. James Donovan saying exciting. James Donovan, also known as Decimage, rode his racing during the break. We think Xeris is vacuuming. And Luce89 or Lewis Wedding also watching along. So good to have you guys with us. We hope you enjoy the race. We'll be underway in not too long a time at all.
Luce89 also wondering if anyone's going to end up in the river on the other side of the Tamburello corner. And I wouldn't be too shocked, to be honest, because these are just Armco barriers here. If you hit them hard enough, you will go over the top of them, as I found out in private practice. So you never know where these cars are going to end up in this infield and outfield.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time something like that happened in Apex Rear Wing, would it?
Certainly wouldn't. Even last season, we had quite a few of those incidents. I fondly remember Decimage at Belle Isle receiving a solid cop of the commentator's curse as I was talking about how good his race was doing.
I don't know if he
didn't mount to the
fondly
gutter,
remembers
went
that.
over the fence and ploughed through spectators and ended his race in spectacular fashion.
Yeah, that was one of our highlights of the DRM Championship. Probably not one of his highlights, though.
No, certainly not. Unfortunately, he's not racing with us today, so he will be sorely missed in the field today. But we've got a strong field of 12 cars regardless, so it's going to be a great turnout, and it's going to be... Oh, Sam Smith getting very sideways there as I'm just watching his screen as he's almost toying with the limits of grip now.
Yeah, he is. Back to the garage, so he won't be participating in this warm-up start. So they're all choosing very different grid spots to what we, to the last warm-up start. And I think it's a bit of a free-for-all now. It actually looks like some footage of those old 1970s racing starts where they didn't have sensors in the ground to determine if anyone got a jump start, and they were all kind of rolling a little bit when the light went green.
Well, not even the light, when the green flag waved.
That's right. Oh, huge crash there. That was the March, and the Williams there of Nether has gone
completely over the top. They've all barreled away. What you're watching, ladies and gentlemen, is not the race, thank heavens, because about half the field was taken out just then.
That was massive. I'm just trying to catch a replay now to see what happened. It looks like they've ended the practice session early.
Yep.
They certainly have, so I won't be able to catch that replay, which is very unfortunate. I'll have to just watch back the broadcast later on. I'm glad you caught it. But we are starting to grid up now for the start of the race, so strap yourselves in, folks, for 30 laps of 1970s action around Imola.
We're looking forward to it. And there is a bit of a calm, but soon enough we will have the cacophony of engine sounds overtake us.
Pablo's missing again, though, I need to point out. There's only 11 cars in the server at the moment. I'd say he's been kicked for the same reason. I'll just go double-check that. And he certainly has. He's got another mismatch, so he'll be aiming to get that sorted out pretty soon. They will.
One thing about those mismatch things is that it will let you practice, so it might have been an issue that was in during the practice session, but he didn't pick it up until it was too late. So that is desperately disappointing. We won't have the Kokosuka Fittipaldi car driven by Pablo as they start to get underway. And Matty, do you want to take us through the grid?
So let's have a look at the grid. It's Xeris lining up from pole position ahead of Brenton Foley in the number 2 Penske. Goofball Antics will be starting from P3 on the grid ahead of Roadhog in the BRM. Sam Smith in the Shadow start from P5 on the grid ahead of Birdo in the Lotus, 2 teammates from the last season of ARW. Nether will be starting from P7 in the Williams, which looks very different to what a Williams normally does these days. Madbird in the 6-wheeled Tyrrell P34 will be starting from 8th position on the grid. Josh Bagsy in the March will be in 9th. Tyrrell in the Brabham is starting from 10th, and Rhodey will be 11th now that we are missing Pablo in the Fittipaldi, which is very unfortunate. And hopefully we can see him back soon as Xeris is now sitting in the pit lane.
What has happened there? So is that his internet, or did he fail to load his setup or something and has elected to start from the pit lane? That is a huge moment in this early stages of the race. We've got Goofball Antics on the warm-up lap, has spun out. Oh, dearie me. And Roadhog. Sorry, that's not Roadhog, that's Brenton Foley. No, that is a connection issue for Brenton Foley. It looks like no, that is a restarted server by the looks of it. So
it certainly is.
What a shambles. What a strange situation there. So I wonder if all of that was in reaction to what we just saw happen with Xeris.
So word from Xeris in the Discord is that due to technical difficulties with Pablo, we are stopping the server and waiting for that to be resolved before the race will get underway.
Combi van ambulance in the shot there. Have a closer look at that while we try and get our server issues fixed. It's a shame there that we've had to have this delay, but it's good for Pablo that we can get, well, it's good for us as well that we can get all 12 cars in if we can indeed solve that issue.
Just looking around the pit paddock at the moment, a vast majority of the vehicles that I can see here look to be Volkswagens, whether they are Beetles or combi vans.
Not wrong.
And there's another vehicle of some description which looks a hell of a lot like an A9X Tirana, but I doubt that it is, to be honest with you.
So, very, very 70s. They've just decided, well, what was popular in the 70s? Volkswagens, Beetles and combis, and caravans as well.
A caravan of which one of these drivers will probably be sleeping in at that era. The facilities, the accommodation was not, definitely not hotel 5-star that we'd see in these days. So Pablo will be starting from in the Surtees car for this race due to issues that he's having with the Fittipaldi.
Okay, so that will be a different livery for us to get used to, but of course we've done our best to try and remind you of who everyone else is driving, and the Surtees car will be the one that Pablo jumps into. Hopefully that doesn't give us any issues moving forward as we try for, I guess, our third time's a charm to get this
Pablo's
race
in the
underway.
server now, so it's going to be very hard to miss this one. It's bright yellow contrasted with blue on the airbox and the driver surrounds. Sponsored by Matchbox, car number 18.
There she is. Oh, that's a beauty.
Oh, it's a lovely looking car, isn't it?
I like it. Let's have a closer look if we can get our cameras onto that car driven by Pablo. Team Surtees.
Originally piloted by John Watson in the 1975 season. Well-renowned Irish driver, I believe he was.
And
I could be wrong.
yeah, well, John Watson drove for McLaren in his and when he got a bit further into his Formula One career, had a bit of success.
Holds the record for the lowest starting position that won a race, I believe. It was P22 in one of the American Grand Prix. I'll have to double check that for you in the 15-minute time that we have before the race starts, unless they decide to skip straight to the race, of course.
Yes, well, I think fingers crossed goes straight to the session, so we don't have to fill anymore. Because I'm getting pretty antsy to get this race started, Matty. Don't know about you.
Yeah, I certainly am. I'm looking to get this thing underway as soon as I possibly can. So, we're still running through this secondary warm-up session now. Sam Smith is out on the track, just turning as many laps in as he can in that shadow. So it's good to see him out there giving it a red-hot crack as everybody else sits in the back of the paddock waiting for the race to get underway. But, so John Watson won the 1983 United States Grand Prix West, which was held at the Long Beach circuit, in the McLaren MP4, looks to be an MP4-1 actually. I could be wrong. That was actually the year
Pablo
after.
from the session again because he was next to Xeris in the garages there, well, the tents that represent garages, and his car
Yes, we certainly
now
have.
disappeared from that spot where it was not a moment ago. He's not on the racetrack. Just Sam, if I'm not wrong, circulating on the track at the moment, but that's a bit of a worrying sign.
So just to finish the point I was making there, John Watson won that 1983 race at Long Beach from 22nd spot on the grid, which is the current Formula One record, I believe. So hopefully that bodes well for Pablo and his ability to be able to work his way up through the field and finish strongly in this race.
That must have been a hell of a race because that's, well, Long Beach, if we've got any IndyCar fans watching along, people will know that's a street circuit, and you don't tend to win races from too far back on a street circuit unless there's an awful lot of carnage.
Just to paraphrase what the Red Bull website has written about it, it had a lot to do with tyres. The qualifying Michelins used by McLaren weren't on the pace of the Goodyears and the Pirellis, leaving Watson and his teammate Niki Lauda 4 seconds off the pace, but the race tyre, however, was more up to the challenge, and the McLarens cut through the field, taking advantage of bad luck and bad judgment from rivals ahead to provide the pub quizzes of the future with valuable ammunition.
I've got to find me a copy of that race and give it a watch, I think.
Looks like we just had another driver drop out there. Rody has fallen off the server as well, just as I was looking at the front wing on that car, which is a very interesting contraption indeed.
We're going to get this race started before we lose any more drivers.
Yeah, it's already a race of attrition. They haven't even taken to the track yet.
Well, I suppose, if anything, this emulates the real-life lack of reliability of Formula One cars in 1975, where if you go through one of the old results pages on Wikipedia from a season of that era, you'll see an awful lot of DNFs, mostly due to technical issues.
Makes me think back to a few races ago in Formula One where Sebastian Vettel had engine issues and then said he wished they'd go back to the V12s, notwithstanding the fact that they are some of the most unreliable engines ever to take to a Formula One track.
I did like the irony of that we've probably never had more reliable cars in Formula One. And it seemed like an odd thing to bring up in that exact moment, as he had his, if I'm not wrong, his first retirement of the year. And wished for an era.
Rose-tinted goggles are a powerful thing, Stairs.
They did sound good, though, didn't they? V12.
Oh, they certainly did. And you'll be able to listen to a couple of V12s in this race as well. Xeris, as I was saying earlier, will be piloting a Ferrari V12 in that Clay Riccatoni number 11 car. And Roadhog in the BRM has a V12 behind him as well. And they do sound pretty nice.
So we've just had another server reset. Live timing showing Pablo in, but now no Rody. So we get one, we lose one.
Pablo's in for the meantime, but he's had a mismatch again.
Yeah, it's not
So
good.
he will be kicked.
I don't think it was to do with the car that he had. So it's something to do with his mod that no
He
one
is
else
back in the Fittipaldi though. So that might be it.
Maybe.
The plot thickens.
The plot thickens, but we don't know what's in the contents of that thickness.
No, we certainly don't. We're just trying to stir it as best we can.
Well, we are. We've got the spatulas, and we're just gung-ho. And applying little bits of See, this analogy would work better if I could remember what that floury stuff you use to thicken sauces is called. But nevertheless, there may be a small subsection of our audience who understand where I'm trying to go with this.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm just keen to dish up and get this meal underway, to be honest.
Yes, I heartily agree with you there. Sam Smith is the only driver who seems to be willing to get a bit more track time. Everyone else is laid up in the pits, probably having a bit of a joke, having a bit of a laugh, trying to forget about the nerves.
And I just want to say hello to Sue Smith, who is back on the YouTube broadcast with us tonight watching. Hello, Sue. Great to have you with us. Sam Smith's mother, I believe, Stairs.
Yeah, I believe Sam's family loves to watch him race and was with us for a number of the DRM races that he won. And hopefully you weren't watching that race where he crashed out of the championship, but we won't speak too much about that. It was, apart from that, a very strong championship from him.
It certainly was. He was really able to perform quite well in the Porsche 935. There were some shades of unpredictability in his handling abilities and inconsistency with that sort of thing, but he did finish strongly. He really was able to wring as much of the performance out of the Porsche 935 as possible, and I'm looking forward to seeing similar results from him with Shadow here as he races around Imola.
Oh, 2 wheels in the grass there. I wonder if he's trying to do that in the race itself, really making the apex of that, or the radius of that Tamburello corner as shallow as he possibly can. But the problem with that is that he gets a couple of wheels in the grass, and that may affect his grip a little bit. So risk and reward strategy there from Sam Smith.
Brody's back in. Pablo is not. So we're still waiting to see what's going to happen there. But the cars are starting to grid up.
Yeah, so this is our second attempt now at gridding up this race, and we certainly hope this will be also the last time that we do this tonight. Unfortunate for Pablo. Hopefully we can get whatever issues he was having fixed for the next round. Of course, the next round is using a different mod, so if it is related specifically to this mod, it shouldn't be an issue for him next round.
So as it stands, we have 11 cars on the grid getting ready to take part in this race. Pab's still having vehicle collision mismatch according to Brody there, which is unfortunate to see. But 11 cars will still be a very nice field, and they're going to be very, very competitive. Won't be wanting to touch wheels too much, mind you, given the size discrepancies and the lack of protection of these wheels on these cars. And they're getting underway for the second warm-up lap. And I'll just quickly remind you of the grid as it stands for this 1972 race. Xeris will be starting from pole position in the Ferrari 312 ahead of Brenton Foley in the Penske. On the second row, we have Goofball Antiques in the McLaren next to Roadhog in the BRM. Starting from P5 is Sam Smith, who we've been seeing tearing around the track all through that interim there. Probably getting a little bit more practice in, and we'll see if that translates to race results as he makes his way up. Next to him is Birdo in that lovely, lovely Lotus in P6. Netherelmian in the Williams starts out of P7 ahead of Madbird in the Tyrrell P34 six-wheeler from 1976 in 8th position. Josh Bagsy in the March with the massive T-trays on the back there will be in 9th position ahead of Tyrrell in the Martini liveried Brabham, and Rody will be starting from P11 in the Rohrsteiner Brewery car, the number 30, I believe that is. I could be completely wrong there. I'll just double check that with the spotter's guide.
I think you're
Is
right,
the number, no, the number 30 would have been the Fittipaldi. I don't actually know what number this car is. It's the 32.
32.
There we go.
Yeah, so Rody driving in that 32. So we're down to 11 cars from 12. So we've got 11 cars and 46 tyres. And let's hope that we still have 46 tyres at the end of the first lap.
Just have a look at that front wing on the front of that Warsteiner car, as I was explaining earlier. It's really novel how it's held on there. It's just basically a T-tray that's been strapped on with a couple of metal reinforcing rods through the front bumper there.
Well, we mentioned earlier on in the broadcast that the Warsteiner car was built by Hesketh, so in true eccentric Hesketh style, that car has been built.
Looks pretty great as well. Has a pretty nice livery on it, that golden Warsteiner branding. And all the cars here really have very nice striking liveries too. There's not a huge amount of late crossover in terms of liveries. We don't sort of have a situation where we've got 5 different manufacturers running Marlboro liveries. So there's
as
very
we
nice.
may do in the future.
As we certainly may. Xeris' Ferrari is timeless as always. And there's a few other unknowns that a lot of people have forgotten about, like that Penske car there, the BR Ram, the Shadow, and the original Williams before the Williams team as we know it today even came to be. So that Martini livery you see at the back there is on the Brabham, and we're just getting gridded up now. Everyone's starting to take their spots, and we'll be having a race on our hands in just a few moments.
Yeah, just trying to zoom out so we can get an overall picture of this race start. Bit of an awkward camera angle, but this is 1975, so true to life. The cameras are in strange positions, the lights are on, the revs are rising, and we're about to get racing. And the 4 Decades of Imola, a few people jumping the starter. Drive-through penalty for Sam Smith, which has absolutely wrecked the start of his race. What utter disappointment for him. He's going to have to take a tour of the pit lane as they come down. It's Brenton Foley in the lead from Xeris, and behind him it is Goofball Antics, I should say. Sam Smith didn't get any advantage out of that jump start to compound his problems.
That's a big shame for Sam Smith. He's going to have to take a drive-through penalty. I don't know if it's going to affect him a massive amount. That pit lane entry is very awkward to get into, but it's a speed limit of, I think, 80 kilometers an hour or maybe even faster, so he won't lose too much time. And if he's fast on track, he should be able to make his way back up through very quickly indeed. We're still sitting with no real incidents apart from what we've seen at the start there, so it is still Brenton Foley.
Brenton Foley having a huge moment there. He's lost 2 positions out of that, and Xeris goes through into the lead. Goofball Antics is up to second, and that was a big mistake there for Brenton Foley. Now behind him, Berto is up to 4th place. Nether is in 5th. Sam Smith dropped to 6th off the start. Roadbog's in 7th. Madbird in 8th. Bagsy 9th. Rody 10th. And Tyrrell in 11th.
Rody just scraping the fence there, and he'll probably be dropping back to 11th place pretty soon. He's got Tyrrell all over the back of him, but Xeris has already started to stretch out. Now that he's in front, he's almost a second ahead of Goofball Antics in that Ferrari with Goofball in the McLaren, and Brenton Foley will be looking to get his confidence back after that very hairy moment on only lap 1 of 30. Let's see if Sam Smith is going to come in for his pit lane penalty this time around. He's backing off a little bit off the back of Nether, and he will be coming in.
Yes,
very close there was Roadhog to running into the back of him, actually.
Yeah, I wonder if there was any communication there. Now, this is where there is a pit lane penalty, but it's much faster than a normal pit lane penalty. So, as you said, he doesn't lose too much time, and that penalty has cleared. So that's good news for Sam Smith.
So he's on the back of the field now, but he's only got a gap of 3 seconds to Tyrrell in front of him. So expect to see him back fighting for positions very soon.
Right, let's see what else has happened in this race. Xeris still holds the lead. It's Goofball Antics coming under a bit of pressure now from Brenton Foley, and they've stretched away a bit from Berto, who's now 3 seconds behind as Brenton Foley gets another big swapper on, so he gets right up behind Goofball Antics and then loses a whole chunk of time with that moment.
Oh, very big sideways action into what is now known as the Aqua Minerale.
A huge crash. Sorry, Roadhog has come bouncing off of the racetrack and collided with Madbird. We'll just try and catch a replay of what happened there. I just saw the tail end of it as it was happening, and that was down into Aqua Minerale. Looked like he bounced off the curb or something, and just catching the 2 wheels on the grass. 2 wheels on the grass there for Roadhog, and that was a big impact.
Yeah, 2 wheels on the grass is really going to catch people out. And he did very well not to get a huge amount of damage there. We're only sitting at 25% damage in the settings for this race, but that 2 wheels in the grass, as I was saying earlier, it really gets you.
Yeah, well, thankfully, that 25% damage was to try and stem the rate of attrition that we were, dreading, I suppose, for lack of a better term, in this race. And, if it keeps Roadhog in the race for a little bit longer, then that will certainly be good news for us. Now, Sam Smith, as a result of that, has moved up into 10th place. In fact, there's a bit of a battle there, if we can bring that up, for 9th, 10th and 11th.
Yeah, Tyrrell's a little bit out in front in 9th position. Rody's just run off onto the grass. Not sure if that was accidental or deliberate to get out of the way of Sam Smith, but that's brought him down to 10th position, and Sam Smith is into P9, chasing down Tyrrell with a gap of around about a second in front of him.
Yeah,
That's come down very quickly indeed. He's all over the back of him. Look at this.
Yeah,
he's going to go up the inside at Tosa. That was very rapid.
Well, we've just had an off-track moment there for Brenton Foley. That's going to put him under some pressure now from Berto. So that is all happening in these early stages of the race. We'll try and catch a replay now of Brenton Foley losing a huge chunk of time. Is that an Aqua Minerale? Yes, it was. A mid-corner spin and kept it out of the wall. So no damage for Brenton Foley, but he's lost a bunch of time with that moment.
And as we
Yeah,
rejoin, he has another moment.
He's just run off wide at Ravazza, and Birdo is right behind him now, looking to get past on the main straight rather. He'll have a slipstream here, and he'll see if he can get past before they get to Tamburello. Otherwise, it'll be a tricky place to get past. But he's fallen off a little bit, and Brenton Foley still holds third position as it stands.
It's all or nothing with Brenton Foley. He had just set the fastest first sector of the race when he made that mistake, so he was pushing hard, but he's living and dying by the sword right now. Now 7 seconds adrift of the leaders, Xeris and Goofball Antics, who are now within a second of one another.
Yeah, so that's hotting up to be quite a good battle as well. I'm not sure if... Xeris hadn't really made too many massive strides on Goofball Antics once he got in front. He got up to about 1.2 seconds ahead, but sort of capped it at that. Didn't want to push himself too hard, which is understandable in these cars. And the result of that is that Goofball Antics is still in touch with him, albeit 6 seconds or thereabouts ahead of Brenton Foley, as Goofball Antics gets a little bit sideways through Aqua Minerale now. Castellaccio, I should be calling it, as it was called back in 1972, but I'm sure I'll forget that and revert to Aqua Minerale very, very shortly.
Well, that's what we know it as these days. Italian for mineral water, which is the thick end of confusing for me. But we'll move on from that swiftly and see what else is happening in this race. There don't appear to be too many other battles. The other one is Roadhog and Roadie, the two roads, having some issues. Unfortunately, Roadhog has gone nothing but backwards. Oh, big moment there for Roadie in the back of the shot there. And he's managed to keep it out of the wall, thankfully. But yeah, Roadie would be, Roadhog, I should say, is going to be carrying some damage from that earlier shunt, as Xeris sets the fastest lap, but it's immediately surpassed by Goofball Antics setting the fastest lap.
Yep, the margin was 0.8 of a second at the line there, so Goofball was able to make up a really big chunk of time in that lap. And Xeris took the fastest lap, but it was immediately snatched away from him by Goofball, as you mentioned. And Goofball is really on the charge now, trying to get towards Xeris in P1. So it's really mirroring the championship battles we've seen in the real-life Formula 1 of 1975 in that era between the Ferrari drivers, what would have been Niki Lauda and James Hunt, and the McLaren driver of James Hunt, of course, as it was immortalised in the film Rush. And now it's playing out on our screens once again.
Well, it's looking good. 0.3 of a second faster on the previous lap. But Xeris has responded with a fastest first sector. He took 0.3 back on the first sector of the following lap. So it's a punch and counterpunch situation for these two right now. But yeah, Ferrari, McLaren, absolutely great to see these two on the track battling on the 1972 version of this Imola circuit. Down towards the Ravazza now. It's very, very difficult to get the car squared off before the braking zone for Ravazza, as the car is all sorts of loose coming over that rise, but they've done it masterfully. And let's see whether Goofball Antics has been able to respond to the early pace on this lap from Xeris. They're going to come across the line in very short order. Xeris has set a fastest middle sector, so he's putting the pressure on. 26.8. Once again, takes a 0.5 out of Goofball Antics' fastest lap, and on the last lap, Goofball Antics was a fair bit slower, so let's see if he has any response.
Yeah, wasn't able to respond on that lap in the margin, and has started going out towards a 1.5 seconds almost. So Xeris is stretching his legs just a little bit now, and it doesn't look like Goofball Antics is able to match what he's doing. Meanwhile, Sam Smith is up to P8 with Roadhog down in 9th position, so I'm not sure if Roadhog's had an issue at some point, or he's... well, he did lose a few spots on the starting grid, I do remember now.
Yeah,
so Sam
he was
Smith
down there anyway.
Him. Yeah, he was. So.
Roadie lost 10 seconds somewhere in the last lap and a half because he was right on the back of Roadhog. And now he's about 12 seconds behind. Tyrrell's in 11th place. Sam Smith is probably the one to watch on his recovery. As you say, he's now up into 8th place. And the next man up the road for him is Bagsy, 4 seconds up the road. But in comparing their last lap times, he should be in there within the next lap or so.
Certainly will be, and it's going to be great to watch. So with 6 laps in, so we're just over, or just getting towards 1/5 race distance so far. So we've got a bit to go as Josh Bagsy has a moment into Aqua Minerale. He doesn't have too much damage, but he's lost a bit of time there.
Well, that's going to expedite the process of Sam Smith catching up to him. We might see him in the back of that shot. No, we haven't just yet, so it's only 3 seconds now. Bagsy's up 2 spots from where he started, so it hasn't been a bad run for him so far.
Yeah, he's doing quite well, actually, in that beta orange-coloured March, piloted by Vittorio Brambilla in the real-life Formula 1 of the era that we're seeing now. And or Brambilla, I should be saying. I'm not sure how it's pronounced properly in Italian. I feel like it's one of those tricky ones, but he was definitely a character if you've read into him a little bit.
No, I haven't. I do tell.
Well, the two stories I'm thinking of at the moment is that he was able to cheat his way, or his team was able to cheat him into pole position at a race, because the transponders and the timing equipment wasn't particularly sophisticated in the 1970s. So what would happen would be...
Sorry, just had a bit moment there for Nether. He's gone into the wall from 5th place, and that's going to cost him a fair bit of time. Madbird is going to come across this scene very, very shortly indeed, with Nether trying to recover to the racetrack. He's managed to do so. Let's see if we can catch a replay of what happened to him. Oh, it's a weird little incident there. He sort of snatched a front and then went careering off the racetrack and into the wall via the grass. So hopefully not too damaged from Nether. Please do continue your story.
So, yeah, what I think it was is that, yeah, the timing beams and the timing transponders weren't particularly accurate or fail-safe back in the 1970s, and they were only timing it down to the 10th or maybe even the 100th of a second. I think it actually was the 10th of a second. So what his team would do is, just before he was due to cross the line, by a matter of half a second or so, his one of his mechanics or his crew chief would wave his pit board in front of the timing beam. So he'd bump his lap time down by half a second,
Well,
and he found himself...
Sorry, Bagsy just losing a position now to Sam Smith. We saw him in the wall just a second ago, getting a bit of oversteer, and that has allowed Sam Smith through up into 7th place.
So Sam Smith now getting past that...
But
March
Bagsy's got an almighty toe coming down through Tamburello.
Oh, he does. He certainly does. And he's all over the back of Sam Smith. I'm not sure if he'll be able to make a move into Tosa, but we'll have a look now. Sam Smith knows how to drive defensively. He's going to have a look. Oh, he's ducking into the inside, but he just can't get anything done.
Yeah, very, very hard to outbrake someone in these cars. And Sam Smith gave him a little bit of room because he sensed that move happening, but was smart enough to give Bagsy the room, but Bagsy didn't elect to take it.
And the other story I had about, Josh Bagsy having a moment there. He had to jump on the brakes to make sure he didn't hit the fence, and he's lost a hell of a lot of time.
Oh, and another spin now. Berto going around from 4th place, and he has a huge gap behind, so he doesn't need to be too hasty in his rejoin of the circuit. But Bretton Foley is now 10, 11, 12 seconds ahead. So Berto, although he's in a bit of clear air, maybe struggling for concentration because he's all alone on the circuit.
Yeah, he certainly might be. And that was at the same corner that Nether had his moment as well on the entry into Ravazza. So it's catching a few drivers out. It's a very unsuspecting corner.
Now Bagsy's coming under pressure from Roadhog, recovering from that earlier incident at the Aqua Minerale. What did you say it was called in this era?
Castellaccio, according to RacingCircuits.info.
Well, they are well known as being a source of information for many a motor racing fan.
We've got a yellow flag against somewhere. Berto's rotated again.
Oh, almost exact same sort of incident as what we've seen from him earlier on. So
and that's at Tosa, and
he has lost position.
Nether, and he's about to lose another one.
Bad rejoin.
Really hits him.
Bad rejoin for Berto there. So that is not ideal. And we go back to live pictures of the battle between Bagsy and Roadhog.
Yeah, it's often quite tricky to get these things corrected on the road in the right position, because you're trying to rotate the car if you spun it around and get it pointing in the right direction, but you often have a little bit too much power at your disposal. And given how touchy the throttle
more incidents. Berto is really struggling. He's damaged that car, I think. He's had another snap of oversteer, and that has allowed Madbird through this time up into 5th place.
So Berto's falling off quite dramatically now, and the gap from him to Sam Smith in P6 is around about 2.5 seconds. And that's going to be coming down pretty quickly, given the state of his car at the moment, as he jumps on the brakes into Ravazza. He's able to navigate Ravazza quite well this time.
Yeah, he must be just hitting the brakes and hoping at this
stage.
stage.
We've had a moment for goofball antics.
Well, we'll try and get pictures of that. So Goofball Antics is now down into 3rd place, which promotes Brenton Foley up into 3rd. What on earth happened there? All lap traffic. Had to take avoiding action there to not hit the car driven by Tyrrell, I believe it was. And there was another lap car going slowly as well. And Goofball was just not expecting them to travel quite as slowly as they did. And unfortunately, that has cost him second place. Now, meanwhile, Bagsy has been passed by Roadhog.
They're side by side on the run into Tosa through what is now the Villeneuve chicane. Bags is having a look up the inside. They both lock their brakes. No passing done yet, but Roadhog's run it wide on the exit, and Bagsy's just snuck it through on the crisscross. So Roadhog down to P9, and Bagsy is back up to 8th position in the marsh. But yeah, what a couple of laps it's been.
Yeah, we were expecting these cars to be very, very tricky to drive, and it's proving to be the case. Berto is trying to recover that position on Madbird. He's only about a second behind, so we'll get a chance in a few moments to check their live timing as they come across the line. But yes, Berto lost 15 seconds on that previous lap, and Sam Smith is, apart from the leaders, the fastest man on the racetrack, only one down in the 29s, of course, apart from Xeris and Folier in the 27s. This battle is now continuing between Bagsy and Roadhog, and be a very brave man to stick your car down the inside at the Ravazza, and Roadhog elects not to, but it's going to get an almighty tow as they come up towards the start-finish straight.
He certainly is. That V12 is going to be screaming at full pelt trying to get past. He's already trying to be all over the back of those T-trays on the march, who misses the apex quite considerably going through
That'll cost him.
Final kink there. That will cost him a little bit of time as they cross the line. Roadhog is all over the back of him, approaching very quickly. Having a look up the inside to Tamburello. Oh, he just backs out, but Bagsy's run it wide, and Roadhog might get the pass done through the corner. Bagsy goes all the way out to the fence, doesn't touch it. Oh, he's in the grass, actually, and that allows Roadhog to get past. Is Roadhog going to miss his braking point? No, he's not. He jumps on the anchors just in time, and that's 8th position, safe and secure for now.
Just in time for us to catch this battle now between Berto, Madbird, and Sam Smith is going to buy his way in very, very shortly indeed. Berto trying to recover that position he lost to Madbird not too long ago. And bit of a moment there into Aqua Minerale. That was very, very lucky not to be an almighty crash. And Berto was probably caught out a little bit by Madbird braking a bit earlier than he was expecting, but Madbird is driving a considered race here. Berto's had a few moments, and they go side by side on the run down to the Ravazza, and Berto screams his way past.
Very, very close there. They definitely touched wheels going through that kink just before Ravazza, but the benefit of the Tyrrell P34 is it has those big side pods which really prevent any sort of crisscrossing of wheels, especially with those small front wheels. So no damage done there. Berto's through, albeit a little bit scrappily, and now Sam Smith is all over the back of Madbird in the Tyrrell P34, trying to get that shadow into P6. He's having a look around the outside into Tamburello, gets all the way out to the paint on the run into the corner, doesn't get anything done there, but this battle is far from over. He's all over the back of him going through that corner. We've seen some fantastic racing through what is now the Villeneuve chicane. This kick in the run into Tosa, he'll have a look potentially. No, he's going to play it safe.
Big lock up there from Madbird though, but he manages to make the apex of the corner. Sam Smith is tight to the inside there. Big moment there from the Tyrrell's gone spearing off to the side. Did he keep it out of the wall? It was a big, big mistake there for Madbird, and Sam Smith goes through into 6th place. Let's see the replay from Madbird and see whether he did make contact with the wall. Huge snap of oversteer, and those 4 front wheels couldn't do anything. And no, he kept it out of the wall, so play on for Madbird, and he'll try and get those positions back.
So no damage to the car, but a lot of damage to his position on track and to his lap time. So Madbird's got a lot of work to do to get himself back up to where he was. But Sam Smith is in P6 currently, chasing down Berto in the Lotus. And we've seen Berto make a few mistakes so far this race. Sam Smith has been pretty much faultless so far, so I imagine this will be a battle that'll be on for young and old pretty soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Fastest lap of the race for Sam Smith was a 29.7. Berto's a 28.2. Beg your pardon. Sam Smith's fastest lap was a 28.6. So Berto has been up to 0.4 of a second faster than Berto times during this race, but on the last lap, Sam Smith was very much the pick of the two.
He certainly was, and he's got a lot of confidence in his car now and in his driving abilities, given the events of the last few laps, and he's going to be charging down that Lotus very soon as we see a little bit of smoke maybe at Toaster. I could be wrong there. Yes, I am wrong. I think it's just the nature of how the game is rendered.
This Lotus has a shadow behind it.
As all cars do when the sun is out, of course. But this shadow is quite literal. It is the shadow, the DN8, I want to say it is. I'll just double check. That's the DN5. I'm completely wrong there. Originally piloted by Tom Price. Now, now being piloted by Sam Smith in P6, doing quite well at it. But, oh, Berto's hit the wall.
Oh, he has hit the wall, and that's gonna allow Sam Smith right through. So Sam Smith did not have to work for it at all. Let's see if we can find out what happened to Berto, because we didn't see it on the screens. And it was that fabled Aqua Minerale corner. It's such a difficult braking zone because you're turning and braking and turning and braking. And he had a huge snap of oversteer at the precise wrong moment. And were it that a more modern version of the circuit, there wouldn't have been Armco barrier, but acres of runoff. And he would have been able to avoid damage. But instead, he's got a bit more steering damage to that John Player Special Lotus.
He certainly does. He's still tracking pretty quickly at the moment, but he's almost going to try and have a look up the inside of Sam Smith and the Tamarella.
Sam's let him through. I wonder if that was a mistake or something else from Sam Smith, because we know that if you get your line wrong there, you can cost yourself an absolute bucket load of time, but that was very bizarre. And someone is off the track there ahead. It's Tyrrell there, a lap down, and thankfully off the racetrack. And there he is. There's the next two cars coming through. That's Madbird and Roadhog, who are now close on the racetrack. Tyrrell still appears to be trying to recover from the racetrack. I think he might be stuck there, actually. Or no, he's waiting for everyone to go past sensibly so that he doesn't cause them any undue stress while rejoining the racetrack. So well done there from Tyrrell.
Tyrrell being lap traffic at this stage. The only other driver on the same lap as him is Rody, who was almost 40 seconds up the road as a result of that incident. So he doesn't serve any benefit trying to get onto the track any faster than he was. And he is currently circulating in 11th place and doing his best to keep his car on the road. But at the other end of the spectrum, let's have a look at Xerus. We haven't really talked about him for a while because he's been so far ahead. The consequence of all the other incidents we've seen so far, especially that one with Goofball Antics, is that Xerus is now 10 seconds ahead of second place, up in the lead at half race distance or thereabouts.
Ooh.
Bit of a slide there into Aqua Minerale, but it hasn't impacted him.
Beautiful, wasn't it?
It certainly did, and hopefully the commentator's curse isn't
let's cut back to this
backside.
battle now for 8th place, because Roadhog and Madbird going side by side, although Roadhog's just lost out a bit. That was out at the Ravazza. Another thing worth noting is that we have had a change of position. For second place, Goofball Antics has managed to repass Brenton Foley. We didn't see that happen. Must have happened a few laps ago.
We must have missed that in the ensuing melee that was happening all throughout the field. But yeah, we've got a great battle there between 7th and 8th position with Roadhog, who is 4 spots down from where we started in 4th position, and Madbird, who is 1 up from where we started in P6. And Roadhog's looking like he's very desperate to try and get past him. He's going to have a look here on the run into what I believe is the Piratella corner.
Yeah, I think they've just gone through Piratella now on the way to Aqua Minerale. Very difficult place to have an overtake, and Roadhog has gone straight into the wall there. And another big moment for Roadhog. He's up on his roof. I wonder if they can get that car righted. He does, but that is going to cost him an absolute bucket load of time, and he'll have a bit more damage to boot. So huge moment there for Roadhog. And all sorts of things happening as well. Brenton Foley has had a moment down at Tosa. I wonder if I saw another car off the track. I wonder if he had some issues lapping someone. So this was Brenton Foley coming up to the Tosa hairpin. No, he locked up all by himself. Locked up the front lefts and lost a huge amount of time, but didn't damage his car, crucially.
We look to have had an issue from Nether as well. He was streets ahead of Birdo, as you remember, and Nether rotated the car at Aqua Minerale as well. So now Nether is down to 5th position, and Birdo is up into P4 in that Lotus.
My goodness gracious me, it's all happening, isn't it, Matty? So this is very hard to keep up with so many people having issues at the same time. We do have vision of that incident there for Nether, and here he is coming up to Aqua Minerale, and yeah, snatched brake by the looks of it. It was a strange little incident. It was actually more on the recovery where he lost the time, just flick spinning it around, and as a consequence he's now well, he's still in 4th, but he's lost a huge amount of time and is under pressure for that 4th place.
Yeah, he's made his way back up into the 4th position there, having just passed Birdo on the run into Aqua Minerale. So he's made his way back up. I think Birdo may have made a slight error there. And the beneficiary of all this is Sam Smith running in P6, very close behind. He's on for a potential 4th place if he can catch up to these guys and get past them.
Yeah, well, he's not too far away, is he?
So that they're all in the same shot there, Nether, Birdo and Sam Smith. And just weird that Sam Smith had got the job done on Birdo, who seemed to be struggling, and now he's well off the back of him. But he does seem to have the pace to catch back up to Birdo.
He certainly does, and we've still got a bit to go in this race. We're on lap 17 now. We've got about, I've got to try and get my maths right, 13 laps to go, I believe. So just
That's
over
right.
half race distance, and Birdo is all over the back of Nether, trying to look around the outside on the run into Tosa. Oh, he's having a look. He's into the marbles. Will he get it pulled up in time? He does, but is he going to compromise his exit? No, he's not. He's pulled it very close to the inside, and he's currently in front, but Nether's got great drive out of Tosa, and he's already back past him into P4. Birdo's going to stay around the outside. No, he's going to pull back behind him and try and get that draft on the run into the Piratella corner. They're all over the back of Rody now. Lap traffic. He pulls off into the grass to let everybody pass.
That's well done from Rody
This
there.
battle's not over yet. They're going to be running into Aqua Minerale pretty soon, where we've seen the bulk of the incidents so far. They're all keeping it pretty neat. Tidy. No, they're not.
No,
Nether is around again.
Brendan Foley's lost it, so he's gone down 3 spots in exactly 1 corner. What a huge disappointment. Sorry, not Brendan Foley. That was Nether. I've done him a disservice. Saw a red car for some reason. I was
Just hold on for the replay though, because Brenton Foley is all over the back of Goofball Antics for the battle for second place through the Tosa corner. They're coming up on the same part of the track now pretty soon, so that's going to be a very juicy battle. And oh geez, it's all happening once again. We're on lap 18 now. Brenton Foley's having a look as they try to go through Piratella, and they're still running second for Goofball Antics and third for Brenton Foley as it stands.
Yeah, this is Tosa. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at a replay. Oh my goodness gracious me! It's very difficult to get all the replays out of the way. That was the moment there.
Goofball's in the fence.
Oh, I thought I was looking at a replay. That was live. Goofball Antics in the fence there. So huge moment there for Goofball Antics. That's going to cost him a huge amount of time. So all of a sudden, Brendan Foley is second. Let's try and catch up with what's going on. So the replay that we tried to get up a few moments ago, that was this one here when Nether was under a huge amount of pressure from essentially the village. There is the village. There is Nether losing it and quite swiftly getting the car out of the way for everyone else. He won't be particularly pleased with that, but everyone else probably would have been. And as a result, down into 6th place. Birdo still behind Sam Smith, but it's a very, very closely fought thing indeed. This battle is the one that's raged on almost all race, Matty.
It certainly has, and it is Birdo who is currently leading that battle in 4th position, with Sam Smith right behind him in 5th. And it's one of those things, now that we've seen all these incidents happening left, right, and centre, you just don't know what's going to happen at any given corner. They're currently running up to Ravazza at the moment, as we see quite a bit of dust on the run into, I think
that's it. That's a big swapper for Birdo. How did he hold on to that one?
Very, very hairy driving from Birdo. I don't know if he actually has a huge amount of damage. He looks to be on a little bit of a suspension lean. Actually, oh, Nether's hit the fence behind him, though.
Yeah, so Nether, and he's starting to come under some pressure from Madbird. He's off the racing line and onto the marbles there, going around the Warsteiner car. They're driven by Rody, but a recovering Madbird looks like he's trying to play himself back into this fight as well. So meanwhile, Birdo and Sam Smith, their battle rages on, and Sam Smith with not quite enough toe to get the move down into Tosa, as Zera sets the fastest lap. He's down into the 26s now. So
Birdo's
big
off!
moment there for Birdo. Oversteer on the exit of Tosa and gifts the position to Sam Smith as a huge number of cars come through. He manages to get out of the way just in the nick of time, and he's lost 2 spots out of that one.
Oh, that's very unfortunate for Birdo. We've seen him make a couple of mistakes so far this race, and that was a big one from 4th position all the way down to P7. So that battle for 5th, what is now 5th position, has gone past him completely. So the running order is currently sitting at Xeris in 1st position, having just posted fastest lap. Oh, big sideways moment for him there as well. Brenton Foley quite a fair way behind him in 2nd position, with Goofball Antics a little under 3 seconds behind in 3rd. So they're pretty clear of trouble. Sam Smith, having taken a pit lane drive-through penalty at the start of the race, is already up to 4th position, benefiting from all these mistakes that everyone's been making. Nether is in P5. Madbird is pretty close to him in P6, trying to get past him. Birdo was just in front of Sam Smith in 4th before, but he's fallen off the track and is down to 7th, with Roadhog bearing down on him now. Bagsy is a bit further behind them in 9th position. Rody is in 10th, and we've got Tyrrell in the Brabham in 11th. So I think Brenton Foley he's not made an error, but Goofball Antics is all over the back of him. So we've got another battle hotting up yet again for second position. I don't know where to look.
Yeah, Brenton Foley dropped 2 seconds to Goofball Antics in the middle sector there, so that suggests to me that there was a mistake from
He's
Brenton
hit the fence
Foley.
really hard at Piratella. I've just had a look at the replay. You'll want to check that out for yourself. Hopefully that hasn't caused him too much damage.
Well, we'll hold off on that because Goofball Antics is going to get an almighty slipstream as they come down towards Tamburello here past the start-finish line. And it looks like he may well be able to make a move down into this Tamburello corner. Maybe not quite close enough to do it there. He's lost a bit of time there in the dirty air. And he'll try and claw that back in before Tosa. And the helicopter picks up a fantastic shot of these two making their way through the first sector here at Imola.
Yeah, it's a great helicopter shot that we have here at this version of the Imola circuit as they just come to the Tosa corner now. Brenton Foley's giving it full beans, getting a little bit sideways on the exit of that corner, not compromising his run too much though. He's still ahead of Goofball Antics and managing to peel away and extend that gap once again. But yeah, it was a massive impact he had at this part of the track last lap around. Just sort of slid sideways, didn't rotate the car, but really had a big tank slap with the fence as we had a brief local yellow flag there in that part of the track. I'm not sure what's happened with that.
That was the Warsteiner car there driven by Rhodey, so thankfully he was off on the grass. There isn't a lot of runoff on that part of the racetrack, but he did manage to find a little bit of it. I think Xerus might be just pacing himself right now, either that or he has made a mistake, because with all the errors we've seen from Brenton Foley and Goofball Antics, they're only 16 seconds behind him, and I would expect that gap to be bigger unless Xerus is just pegging it to get... Oh, big moment there from Foley. Or Xerus might just be managing his pace right now.
Well, Xerus had to slow down a bit because he was directly behind Rhodey when he spun at Aqua Minerale and had to take evasive action to make sure he didn't hit the guy. So he had to jump right on the brakes, slow right down, and maneuver around him. So that would have cut into his margin a little bit, although he is making that up pretty rapidly. He's already pulling that gap out because this battle between Brenton Foley and Goofball Antics for second and third is cutting into both of their fast times, respectively.
Yeah, and there's no danger from behind unless they have a big crash, because look at Sam Smith. He's nearly a minute behind them, about 50 seconds or so. So they can go hell for leather battling each other and not worry too much about how much time it's costing them, because there are only 8 laps left in this race.
So it becomes a sprint at this point as Tyrrell hits the fence big time in front of Foley.
Brenton Foley had a huge moment trying to avoid that accident, got the car all sorts of out of shape, and Goofball Antics somehow managed to stay out of the back of him there as they came across down into Aqua Minerale. Another moment there for Brenton Foley. This time that does allow Goofball Antics through.
Yeah, so Brenton Foley's all shaky now. He's losing track of where he is on the track, and he's sliding and slipping all over the place. And Goofball Antics is staying rock steady, moving up to second position as a result of that wobble out of Aqua Minerale. They're going to stay second and third with a bit of a margin now as they go through Rivazza on the run down to start what will be lap 23. So there will be 8 laps to go for these guys once they cross the line. The Xerus, mind you, is already going through Tosa at the moment, so he's a massive margin ahead of them, about 20 seconds in fact.
Now, behind him, obviously about 20 seconds to Goofball Antics and Foley, but Sam Smith is pretty safe from Nether, and Berto down in 6th place. Looks like Madbird's dropped some positions lately, just trying to see if we can pick up where that occurred. But he was up ahead at one stage of Berto with the issues that Berto has had earlier in the race.
Yeah, I'm just noticing that Tyrrell has DNF'd as a result of that crash we saw just before. So he's in the garage and it is now a 10-car race. So it's a shame to see Tyrrell fall off the race. But just seeing Madbird, yeah, what he did was he ran wide during that battle with Berto who was having. Just got 2 wheels in the grass on the run into Rivazza on the brakes. And he's hit the wall pretty hard, actually. So that's what's dropped him down.
Yeah, and there is a replay there of Berto getting a bit of a slipstream on Madbird after that incident that you just mentioned. See if we can see where it was that he actually went through. It might have been up here at the hairpin at Tosa. And we just fast forward, that might have been after that, in fact. So this replay went back a long way. Apparently I've gone past the moment when I was rewinding, so we should be able to find it on here. Yeah, there is that moment that you're talking about, and that was all it took for Berto to go through into where he is now, which is 6th place.
while we were seeing that replay, Goofball Antics had a moment of his own in Aqua Minerale, slapped the wall, not too hard, but enough, and wasn't able to get back onto the racing line. So as a result, Brendan Foley is back up to P2.
So you take your eyes off this race for only a split second. And
Oh, Foley!
stuff happens. Case in point. Let's. What have we seen here? Let's. Oh, there it is.
And
Brendan
while you've been
Foley,
watching the replay, Foley spun it at Tosa, so now it's Goofball back up in second place.
All right, so here is the latest incident in a series of incidents, and that was it. So no extra damage there for Brendan Foley, but tyres will be starting to get a bit old. We did set the tyre usage to 1 times so that it wouldn't be too much of an issue for the drivers, but of course it is proving to be so. Now lap traffic is becoming a bit of an issue for the leader now as the P34 of Madbird gets completely out of shape there. And Cirrus does get through. It'll be Roadhog next for him to lap.
So the one constant we've seen so far in this race has been Cirrus pretty much maintaining his position out in front, just trying to get past some lap traffic now. First he's seen for a little bit. Getting past Roadhog now to put him a lap down as he runs down into Tosa. So the next cars behind Cirrus, competitively speaking, will be Goofball and Brenton Foley in second and third respectively, as we see Madbird getting out of shape once again out of Tosa.
You had a bit of a half look at Roadhog coming into that corner, but lost it all on the exit. We saw him make a similar mistake a few laps ago where he ended up just keeping that one out of the wall. But he's lost a fair bit of time out of that one. Now, Goofball Antics, as we detailed, has second place at the moment in what has been a seesawing battle between himself and Brenton Foley, which seems to be, well, like much of this race, the battle of who can make the least number of mistakes. So easy to lose control of these cars. You and I have both had a bit of a drive around this track and these cars, and it's not just the cars, but the elevation changes are such a challenge.
Yeah, it's hard when you're trying to get the throttle down, going over a blind crest. Well, doesn't even really matter if it's a blind crest, but if you're trying to get the throttle down, you'll lose all grip as you normally do with the inertia trying to take you off into space, and your tyres are only half touching the road, and you really can spin out very easily with not much keeping you glued to the ground. So it's hard enough to get these things accelerating quickly out of a corner on flat ground. When you're trying to go over a hill at the same time, it makes it even more difficult. So the guys out in front at the moment are doing a very good job of holding on to themselves as Cirrus gets past Berto now as lap traffic to maintain his first position. Berto still sitting in P6, a little bit behind Nether at the moment, so Nether will be the next target in line for Cirrus to get past. But Sam Smith in the shadow is still a fair way behind Brenton Foley, so all the mistakes that the top guys in second and third have been making hasn't allowed Sam Smith to catch up a massive amount. And with only 5 laps to go, it's going to be pretty hard for him to make any further ground unless there's a catastrophic error from one of the drivers ahead of him.
So it's quite remarkable now that we only have 4 cars on the lead lap, which is Cirrus, Goofball Antics, Brenton Foley, and Berto. Now, Sam Smith, how far away is he from getting lapped? Down there in 4th place. He's just coming out of the Ravazza bend right now as Cirrus has made his way just through it right now, actually. So that's probably about 5 seconds away from being lapped. Cirrus will breathe a sigh of relief that he's got through that bunch of traffic.
The traffic at this point is going to be never ending. I'm just going to have a look at the timing screen to see how spread out everybody is. But Cirrus does have a bit of a gap in front of him, so he's got some time to breathe. He's got some time to start punching out fastest laps again, which I'm sure he'll be doing just for a laugh, just for something to do, really, in that Ferrari 312. And he's proven to be absolutely rapid. You stick Cirrus in any vehicle you can find for him, and he will be quick around, well, any track that you can find for him as well.
Well, the thing is, he's taking that car to the limits without taking it over the limits. Every time we go on board with him, we see that he is still pushing hard, but he's not pushing too hard. So he's down in the 27s at the moment. His fastest lap was a 26.5. But look at that, even there, 2 wheels on the grass, but not too close to those limits. Even though he's right out towards the edge of the racetrack, the car isn't squirreling around too much. Just a little bit of a wiggle, which is how these cars behave, but not Not like whenever you jump on Sam Smith, where it looks like he's trying to drive the thing. Well, there you go. Case in point.
Well, I noticed in practice, actually, Zero spun out quite a few times in that Ferrari, so I'd say he's adopted the Marc Marquez strategy of learning how a car and a track works, or a bike in Marc Marquez's case, of course, is pushing it over the limits flagrantly during practice and qualifying, crashing or spinning quite a lot. And then once you get to the race session, you know exactly how the vehicle is going to handle, and you can push it all the way to the edge of the limit without going an iota over, and that allows you to dominate races, as Xeris is doing, and as Marc Marquez has been doing pretty much his whole career.
Yeah, absolutely. He certainly knows where the limit is once he's found it, so you're right, he did that in practice, and the difference between him and, I guess, everyone else when they crash in practice is that Xeris has just bookmarked that point in his mind, and he knows exactly where it is when he gets anywhere near it in the race itself.
So Goofball Antics was 2 seconds off his best lap time last time around. They posted a 1 minute 28, so he's lost a little bit of time there. It's a 1 minute 26 from Brenton Foley, only a 10th off his best lap time. So Brenton Foley's feeling pretty good about that Penske at the moment, pushing on, trying to get back up to Goofball Antics. There's about 1.5 seconds of a gap between those two cars, and with 3 laps to go, that battle isn't really over yet. There still could be mistakes from either one of those drivers.
Sorry, speaking of battles that aren't over, Berto and Roadhog having a bit of a stoush. This one over 5th place, and that was nearly brought all undone by Roadhog, nearly getting collected by Rodee there in the Warsteiner entry there. So he was a lot closer before that moment, but on the last lap, Berto did a 29.7 and Roadhog did a 29.2, so he took half a second out of him on that last lap.
And look how close Roadhog is now going onto the main straight. He's all over him. He might even get the pass done before they get to Tamburello. He's all tucked in right there. He's going to slip by on the outside. He's in front at the moment, but Berto has got the inside line into Tamburello. Is Roadhog going to get the pass done? Yes, he is. What a move from Roadhog.
Supreme bravery there. If they connected there, it would be an aeroplane crash, to borrow a Brundle phrase. But a brave move there from Roadhog, and he gets the job done.
He certainly does, but it's a big lock-up from him on the run into Tosa, so that might compromise his run out of that corner, which means Berto could be able to catch up on the run into Piratella. But there is a little bit of a gap between them there. He didn't get the ideal line either, Berto, so that battle's staying where it is at the moment, but it's far from over. We'll definitely have to keep our eyes on that one as the race progresses. Meanwhile, up in front, we've had a little bit of a spin there from somebody. I think it may have been Madbird at Tosa ahead of Goofball Antics. So that gap between Goofball Antics and Brenton Foley is still staying steady there. So Goofball's feeling pretty good about where he is at the moment.
Yeah, 2.5 seconds. So I think he's probably the faster on race pace than Brenton Foley, but probably 1 or 2 more mistakes from Brenton Foley today. When Brenton Foley was trying to catch up to him in the early stages of the race, he probably did his tyres in a little bit.
I'd say you may have, and now Xeris in first position is crossing the line to start his final lap of the race.
That was quick.
And he's just behind Sam Smith in 4th position, so he's may potentially lap him on this final lap here, and it just goes to show how much faster Xeris has been this race.
Yeah, he probably won't be, well, I was going to say he probably won't be in any rush to do so, but Sam Smith has lifted out of the throttle on the approach to Tosa and taken the decision out of his hands, so he'll only have to do 29 laps, and we'll end up with just the 3 cars completing the full 30-lap distance of this race. And those drivers being Xeris, Goofball Antics and Brenton Foley, but Xeris has been in a class of his own, and he's going to take a commanding lead in the first part of this championship, the 4 Decades of Imola. We're not using the point system from the early 70s. Oh, big moment there from Sam Smith in the background there, but keeps it facing in the right direction, and he'll press on. I'm very impressed with the lack of attrition actually in this race. Only 1 DNF there.
And a DNS from Pablo as well, relating to unfortunate server issues there. We've had another spin there. Madbird in the Tyrrell has rotated his car there in 8th position, so he's lost a spot to Nether. And he's starting to drop down a little bit, so it's a shame for him to lose a spot there and lose out on some points in the final lap. But we're just going to go back to Xeris now, who's coming onto the front straight. He's going to cross the line very soon. He's going past pit exit or pit entry, and with a gap of almost 25 seconds, Xeris crosses the line to win the first race of the 4 Decades of Imola series here at the 1972 version of the circuit. Great
Fantastic.
job from Xeris.
Yeah, great job from him. The next man across the line will be Sam Smith, but of course a lap down. And then Goofball Antics and Brenton Foley coming through to finish second and third.
So Goofball's going to hold on to second position, and it's a great result from him given the accidents and the incidents that were befalling almost the entire field there. Brenton Foley will hold on for third position, side by side with lap traffic there in the form of Rhodey, and Sam Smith and everyone else now has crossed the line. So that's our race position sorted. So we've got Xeris, our winner, by 25.8 seconds. Goofball Antics, second place ahead of Brenton Foley in third. The only 3 cars to finish on the lead lap. Sam Smith finished in P4. A great recovery from what was essentially a back of the grid start, given his penalty there. Roadhog has just spun into the fence there, but he's finished his race, so he's all good. He is our 5th place winner, having only lost 1 spot from the start there. So great result from Roadhog as well. Birdo in the Lotus, despite his numerous spins and excursions off the circuit, has finished in 6th position, with Nether in 7th in the Williams. Madbird in P8 in the Tyrrell. An unfortunate result there for him. It matches his qualifying performance. Bagsy in the March in 9th position. Rhodey has made his way up into 10th, and Tyrrell down to 11th as a result of that DNF.
And the last man to come across the line will be, in fact, Bagsy. In fact, he's just come across the line about 5 seconds ago, so he finishes 9th. The last man 1 lap down. And Xeris now on his parade lap, on his celebratory in-lap. As I was about to mention, there, that noise you can hear is a celebratory crash there from Bagsy, but we'll move swiftly on from that to avoid epileptic fits. Xeris comes into the pits, a deserving winner.
Great result from Xeris, and he's really carrying on his form that we've seen in the last couple of seasons of Apex Reoing. He's really one of the superstar drivers of this series, and it's always great to see him drive any car that we give him.
Well, it took a long time for him to get his first win in DRMs, but of course that was uncharacteristic of him. He's got it straight away in the 4 decades of Imola, and he's with us now. Congratulations, Xeris.
Oh, thank you, Stairs.
How did that race go for you? We didn't really see too many mistakes from you. A few others were spinning off here and there, but did you have any big issues?
I did have a big spin at one point, but I got away with it. It was I guess a race where I could just sit down and concentrate after the first 2 laps when Heathy broke away, or I broke away from Heathy. So yeah, it was good practice for concentration, I guess.
Speaking of practice, we were commenting earlier about how we saw you spin out a few times during that session. It looks like you've picked up those lessons that you learned and were able to translate them into a good race performance. Was that your strategy in practice, to just try and push the limits a little bit too far so you knew where they were come race time?
Yeah, sort of. I do tend to push too hard in practice, but it certainly does help so that I know where I can make mistakes and where I can gain time and stuff like that.
Well, you ended up gaining time pretty much the entire race there, and the final margin was just over 25 seconds. So fantastic result there, Xeris. Well done again. We move on now to our second position getter, Goofball Antics. So Goofball, well done on second position, particularly given the amount of spins, crashes, everything that was happening there between you and Brenton Foley. It was a really interesting battle between you two.
Yeah, it's a bit disappointing, to be honest. I should be stoked for second, but I was keeping pace with Xeris there in the beginning. That just lapses of concentration, trying to read the stream in the wrong places, and you put a wheel on the grass and it slows you right down. It's weird. Like, you put a wheel on the grass and it's like it sucks you right into the wall, and it takes what feels like forever to actually get away from the wall and back onto the track. So I don't know what's going on there, but had a few of those, couple of spins, but yeah, good battle with Foley. That was really enjoyable, that part.
Yeah, absolutely. Stairs, we were having a couple of it was hard for us to keep track, wasn't it, with all the stuff that was happening on track, particularly between those guys in second and third, wasn't it, Stairs?
Yeah, apologies to the viewers. Had a bit of a stroke halfway through that race with all the different replays and battles that we were trying to keep up with, but I believe we did catch up at one point, and then it all happened again. So, let's turn our attention to Brenton Foley. who I think would, given what you were talking about in the week leading up, you're playing down your chances with this series, but you were a bit surprised that these cars weren't quite as aero-dependent as you were expecting, and you were able to make hay tonight.
Yeah, you pretty much summed it up by people spoke of F1, and you think of F1 and it comes with aero, and that's my struggle. But these ones suited me a bit better. I don't think I'll be as flash in the races to come, but that one was pretty good. Me and Heath, as you said, had a wicked battle. Every time that one of us got ahead or behind, we had to try and set more PBs, which caused more mistakes. And I reckon I had the pace, as Heath said, he had the pace to save zero. So I reckon I did as well, or thereabouts, but just too many little mistakes.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, in the end, it was not a huge gap separating podium sitters, Matty, but, the second and third, I should say. Big gap between first and second. But it was great to see battles for the podium and also up and down the field.
Yeah, it was great stuff all the way around. Much less of a race of attrition than we thought it was going to be. There's a couple of accidents here and there, as you mentioned, but nowhere near as bad as we were expecting. Not a massive amount of damage caused either, so we were able to see the vast majority of cars running at pace around the track for the entire race, and that's always a good thing.
Very good. And before we sign off today, probably a good point to mention. We didn't talk about it before the broadcast got underway because I didn't remember it, but Madbird in this race, although he's not with us today, or not with us anymore, I think he's gone to bed feeling a little bit poorly this week, but congratulations to him on joining the 100 Club. 100 races for Apex Rear Wing. Joins an illustrious club which also includes Decimage, Netherelmian, Bagsy, Goofball Antics, and Xeris. So he joins some rarefied air right there.
Well done to Madbird there on joining the club. Unfortunately, not the 100th race he would have been expecting, I don't think. He didn't finish particularly well there, given the incident he had and the couple of incidents he had. But it was great seeing that six-wheeler Tyrrell going around the circuit, and I'm sure he had a blast doing it as well.
Well, in 2 weeks' time, we'll be racing in a completely different decade. The racetrack is going to get a bit of an overhaul. We're going to race in 1988, and that will be in 2 weeks' time. I can't wait for that one, Matty.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Couple of changes to the track. A few chicanes dotted here and there, but the cars will be the turbo era, 1980s cars, of course, so oodles of power behind them. Of course, the era of the famous McLaren MP44. So there's going to be a little bit more aero, but they're still going to be pretty slippery. They're going to be rapid, and it's going to be great racing.
Absolutely. If you want to get any more details on the lead up to that round, do follow us on Facebook. We'll have all the details. Spotter guides, because, of course, we've got some people jumping into different teams, some teams that didn't exist in 1975, and vice versa. So we'll give you all that information on the Facebook. Don't go, put it in your calendar, and don't miss it. See you then.